Ready, Jeff? Okay, I'm going to call to order the regular board meeting on March 10th at 7 p.m. at Hubble Middle School. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Here. Here.
Here. Here. Here. Okay, Mrs. Crabtree, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does any board members have any requested modifications to the agenda tonight? Okay, before we start our meeting, make a few opening comments. At our last meeting, the board asked Dr. Schuler to bring back an updated return to learn plan so that we would be ready if the community metrics arrived at a point within the health department guidelines that we would have flexibility to adjust our current in-person learning model. Tonight, Dr. Schuler and his team will share a comprehensive update of our plan that touches on all three grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school, discusses the operational impacts, and outlines an approach to solicit parent feedback on the details of those plans. Perhaps most importantly, just over 31 hours ago, the Illinois State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health updated their guidance, primarily around distancing and capacity limitations in single spaces. Both of these updates will positively impact and hopefully accelerate our plan. As has been previously stated, we are planning to offer a traditional school day, 5 full days a week for the 21-22 school year. With this new guidance, we are even more optimistic about this school year. Before we get to that oral report, we first want to celebrate some wonderful achievements of some of our high school students. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Polson. It's good to see our audience, our meeting room, a room filled with students this evening, students, parents, family members that are here to celebrate two really significant and special accomplishments. And so I'm going to first call up to the podium Mr. Biskin, the principal of Wheaton North, who's going to introduce our first recognition, and we're going to celebrate some students for some of their academic accomplishments. Mr. Biskin?
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. It's my honor to recognize 3 National Merit finalists from Wheaton North High School. The National Merit Program starts out with about 15 million students nationwide that take the PSAT, and we are now down to 15,000 students that are being honored as National Merit finalists. It's a great honor. It is a byproduct of tremendous work ethic, great effort, dedication. It is something that represents what we would want to see in every single student. While it is a score, believe me, it is a byproduct of the work that these students have put in, and all 3 are outstanding students. It takes more than just them. It takes their families, it takes their friends, it takes a community to help and support these students. So before we begin, I'd like to recognize the parents that are here for these students and give them a big round of applause because I know that they've done an outstanding job. So let's recognize them. Our first National Merit finalist is Emma Simpson. Give her a round of applause. Emma? Our next National Merit finalist is Sam Walhout. Sam? And our third and final National Merit finalist from Wheaton North is Ben Zimmerman. Ben. And one more round of applause, if you want to turn around and face the crowd, for our National Merit finalists from Wheaton North High School. Emma, Ben, and Sam. I'll now hand it off to my esteemed colleague, Mr. McDermott.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome our 2 National Merit finalists from Wheaton Warrenville South High School. Joining us today is Paul. Round of applause. And our second National Merit finalist is Jeremy Alute. And like Mr. Biskin said, you know, this is 12 years worth of work in the making, and that everyone sitting in this room is responsible for supporting these students in some way or another. And I do want to recognize the parents as well with a round of applause. Thank you very much. Congratulations, guys.
So before we turn it over to the next subject, I just want to congratulate the students on behalf of the board and their parents. Outstanding job. We wish you well in your future steps after you leave our high school, and thank you for all your effort over all these years, and especially this year.
Right. Our second recognition this evening, I think it was, I'm looking at the date on the message, so it's going back a couple of weeks ago. I got an email from Mr. McDermott, principal at Wheaton Warrenville South, saying, hey, you're not going to believe what our speech team did. And so, number one, probably not going to come as a significant surprise, especially to board members that have been a part of board recognition in the past. This is not the first time that the speech team at Wheaton Warrenville South has accomplished incredible things. They have been led by a number of years and really have done outstanding work, but this year they really truly knocked it out of the park in the state series. So I'm going to again invite Mr. McDermott to come up to the podium, and he's going to introduce the speech team coach and our recognition this evening.
All right. Well, as Dr. Schuler said, the incredible outcome of the speech team this year, it was incredible to watch them pivot from in-person to remote and performing virtually instead of in person. And the energy that this team has is unlike anything that I've ever experienced. And I've been a speech coach for, I don't know, 25, 30 years. So I understand this world very well, and to know the work that they put in and the outcome that they get is phenomenal. So I want to introduce Mr. David DeMarzo, who's their head coach, and he can take you through the state series and bring their state champions up here.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler and Board of Education. It's a real honor to be here to kind of talk about what these students have done this year. In a year of a lot of change, and they did have to do a change, a lot of what the speech team does was the same, of individuals spreading messages, telling stories, and really working on their craft and skills. This year, we had to lower the team a little bit, so we had 68 total students on the team. Most of them would do their work at home and would have to record their speeches at home. And recording yourself is not a very easy thing to do, even for a teenager, so it's a big ask of these students, but they really worked on it tirelessly and each week producing new videos. And of those 68 students, we then had 21 students represent our team for the IHSA series. That then shifted into live synchronous competitions. So these students would have to clear out their entire Saturday and join Zoom calls and perform their 8-minute speeches, ranging from dramatic to humorous to informative to persuasive to staying up on what we call limited prep. So the 14 different events. And so we couldn't invite everybody here today, so we had them make little videos of them waving because I really want these students to be recognized. So for the state series, there's 14 events, and we qualified 11 to the state finals, which was the second most out of the entire state. And then of those, we qualified to the finals the most out of anybody in the state. But then it's when you get into the state final, it's being able to rise to that occasion. And these students were by themselves in a classroom, so they could be maskless, preparing for a state final. And so, as Mr. McDermott shared, the energy that they had amongst themselves and the support they had from for each other was really inspiring, where even though they were on their own as individuals, they really did feel like a team. And then there is an event called Performance in the Round, which is only for the state series, and we were the state champions this year for now the second time in a row. So it really is incredible of what they did. So here are the students, and if we could just give them a couple of claps, even though if they're not here, maybe they'll still feel that appreciation. So here, junior Abby Linhart, sophomore Alicia Tanetsky, junior Brianna Edinburn, sophomore Colin O'Malley, sophomore David Allgood, sophomore Jacob Perdue, junior Linnea Barron, freshman Maggie Bush, freshman Mia Arcos, sophomore Sam Rizzo, and junior Valentina Mosca. So they composed of the performance in the round that won the state championship. It's our school's 4th total championship in this event. And then for what we call the individual event team, there were 10 students that composed that. Junior Brett Gnyadik, senior, and she placed 16th place in the state in dramatic interpretation, Riley Tomes. One of our senior captains who's here tonight, placing 8th in the state in original oratory, is Natalia Radovic. Previously honored for being a National Merit finalist and also a member of our speech team, placing 8th in the state in original comedy, is Jeremy Alute. Placing 5th in the state and doing this all from her bedroom in informative speaking is Ava Sartor. Placing 3rd in the state is junior, in impromptu speaking was junior Genevieve Getz. Placing 3rd in the state, another one of our senior captains, senior in special occasion speaking, Vanessa Chavez. Placing 2nd place in the state in extemporaneous speaking is junior Grace Morgan. And then placing 3rd in place in poetry reading and as an individual state champion in humorous interpretation is senior Jeremy Ferguson. And for we made this PowerPoint also for our school assembly, and I had her introduce everyone because she was way more eloquent than I am, because she was the state champion in radio speaking, is Naomi Kelly, who couldn't be here tonight, but we can still clap for her. So junior Naomi Kelly. And this is our school's 10th state championship for the individual events for speech. So just letting you know. And in the last 8 years, this is our 7th top 2 finish. So just giving some highlight. And it's really a testament to the students who pass it on and mentor each other. And it's really a testament to the support of the arts that our school district has. From the district administration to our building administration to a school board that recognizes the accomplishments of the arts just as much as we do for the sports and in the classroom is really felt and really appreciated and really special to this school district. So we really want to say thank you to both district administration. Mr. McDermott and Dr. Stellwagen were wonderful throughout the whole year, being supportive and feeling that support. And while the IHSA has had a lot of PR issues this year, they were really supportive of the activities, and we are really thankful for the people at the IHSA office that really ran this. And so this would not have happened without all of the support from our district, so we want to say thank you for that. And also, because it was virtual, the students were at school when they found out that they didn't actually get the trophy or get to show it off, so they asked if they could bring it here. So I'll bring up the students here so that way they can kind of show the trophy and the plaque to you as we've brought it home for the District 200. And also want to say our friends from the north side, the speech team at Wheaton North, had a great season as well. And we always joke that we're Team Wheaton. And so while they're not here, we really are appreciative and want to let you know that they had a great season too. But here's the trophy. So just want to say thank you.
Well, just again, on behalf of the board, hearty congratulations to the entire team and Mr. DiMarzo and all the other people behind you that make this happen. I think you've built a dynasty.
Well, it's nice for you to say there are so many more coaches, then I would be remiss if I didn't say their names as well. Roberta James, Brian Bohr, Dan Ottelin, Shauna Williams, Matthew Dudek, Emily Bauer, Bridget DiMarzo, and Shauna Williams. So there's 8 coaches on this staff that really help out. And the support from our parents is really unreal. And I want to thank them as well, where their students are either performing in their basement, family room. We've even had some students perform in a garage because that was the quietest place where they could go. Or if their students were coming into school, we were able to have some team events at school, and parents were nothing but supportive. So it's kind of you to say, but it really is a whole program, and really a lot of hands go into this.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I think in a year where we're all realizing what we have for resilience, I think what you've outlined and the accomplishments of the team, phenomenal. Congratulations. You've done your school and your community proud, and you've made the Board of Education proud too. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right, I know we have a lot of parents and students here. This is usually the time when we say that you're welcome to stay. However, if you'd like to go watch the meeting on YouTube, that's available to you as well. Although I'm sure you're probably a little bit tired of watching on videos. But thank you again for coming and all the work you've done in supporting the school and your students and your children this year. So thank you. All right, next up is public comment. We have it looks like three people signed up for public comment tonight. And similar opening statements that I've done in the past, due to the ongoing pandemic and DuPage County's recent move back to phase 4 mitigations, which limit the number of individuals in a space at 50, we continue to temporarily amend our public comment procedures to allow comments to be made in person or emailed to the board and acknowledged at this meeting. As for the past 7 months, the board meeting is available for viewing via live stream on the district's YouTube channel. We also have made 2 overflow rooms available here tonight at Hubble, although I don't think we have anybody in there. In accordance with Board Policy 2.230, members of the public wishing to offer public comment in person will have the opportunity to do so. A sign-up sheet was made available at the entrance to the building until 7 o'clock tonight. As I mentioned, we have 3 people signed up. As with all comments, please be aware that it is the board's regular practice to not directly discuss, ask questions, or take action on public comments until the time has been taken to gather adequate information. The board is here to listen. Lack of action or a direct response following public comments does not imply any lack of interest in what is being shared. Per board policy, we've allocated 30 minutes for public comments, and comments on any one subject may be limited to 20 minutes. The board may shorten the time allocation for each person to less than 3 minutes. We won't have to do that tonight since we only have 3 people. To preserve confidentiality, the board and its president request that items relating to either personnel or students be provided to the board privately or in writing for consideration in a future closed session if necessary. The board must protect the civility and decorum of the meeting. Please be respectful for the duties of the board, the district leadership team, and the democratic process in your public comments. Please include your name and whether you are a resident of the district. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Our Vice President, Mrs. Crabtree, will time the comments and raise her hand when the 3-minute mark is up, at which time we ask that you wrap up your comments. Please be factual and courteous and do not include statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. So first up, I'll go in order. We have Kelly Gillenwater.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gillenwater. I'm a parent and a resident of Warrenville. and of 2 students in District 200. I'm here tonight to say thank you. I know you haven't heard that much. As my conversations with Dr. Szilagyi, with Melissa Calvert, Scott McDermott, Matt Stellwagen have gone, nobody is hearing about what you're doing right. Everybody tells you what you're doing wrong. 2 weeks ago, my son was given the opportunity to attend school 4 days a week. Let me tell you, it's a game changer. My kid is thriving. I can't say that enough. There is a pep in his step. He's sleeping. His grades are solid for the first time in a year. A year. This is an honor student. He's got a half academic ride and an athletic scholarship. This kid almost lost everything, and you've given him hope. You've given other kids hope. There are teachers that are going above and beyond. On his birthday on Friday, he chose to recognize staff at South who have made a difference, and those that are struggling, to let them know that he sees how hard it is for every staff member as well. I want you to know every kid deserves this opportunity. With the new metrics that came out yesterday, ones that we've been fighting for, you've heard me speak before, it is time now to flip that switch and open the doors to any and every child that wants to come in person. We can do this. The kids at the grade school level have shown us since September 1st, it can work. The high schoolers, the middle schoolers, they want to be back. They've got their sports back. They have motivation. I've stood here before you and talked about that. We took everything away from them. They're getting it back. And they want to show you that it's working, and they want it, and they can do it. We're asking you to give every child in this district that opportunity immediately. Not wait till after spring break, to open the doors now. Staff's in place. You're there. You've been cleaning the buildings. Now is the time to get these kids back some normalcy. All of our children, not just the select few that have met your parameters and your guidelines and your metrics. It's time for equality. Open the doors, please. I'm telling you, it is working. We hosted an event at Studio Movie Grill last week. Roughly 200 students attended in 4 movie theaters. You can talk to the staff at South. They will tell you there was a sparkle in the kids' eyes. They could see the smiles under their masks. There was a pep in their steps because they did something normal. So I say thank you for all that you've been doing. We recognize it. We know how hard it's been. And we just ask that you let every student have this experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Next is Shannon Lyman.
Hello, my name is Shannon Lyman, and I have 2 boys that are at Wiesbrook here in District 200. And to be transparent, when I came here tonight, I wasn't prepared to speak, so I might hit that 30 minutes, but I'm just kidding. But I was pretty vocal at the start of the year, just praising everyone. I know that we were one of the first districts, if not the only district, that actually went rogue, for lack of a better term, of being able to send our kids into school. As I mentioned, my kids are at the elementary level, and so they're in school from 9 to 1. And I sent notes of encouragement to the Board of Education and to Dr. Schuler, just praising and again thanking you that my kids at least had the opportunity to go for a couple hours a day. That being said, fast forward 6-7 months, I don't really feel like we have a plan or that has been communicated. I know teachers now have been vaccinated. We just got great news yesterday, so in fairness to everyone in this room, I understand that there's probably a lot of discussions being put into play. But I just want to encourage, again, I know we have the union that rightfully so takes care of our teachers, but I just want to make sure that we continue to be advocates for our children. My 4th grader writes in a Friday journal every week. And on Sunday night, I was reading his journal, and it was heartbreaking. He was just begging to go back to school full time. And I get that, there's a lot of different factors that are being accounted for. And I just do want to say thank you, because I know that thus far we really have done the best that we can with what we have, and I just encourage you, to continue doing what you're doing, and just want to say thank you for the work that's been done so far, but just make sure that we don't get complacent. There's other towns and districts in the state of Illinois that seem to be opening up and making, new accommodations for their kiddos, and I just encourage us to do the same. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Next up and last in public comments, Beth Keller.
Hi, good evening. My name's Beth Keller. I have 3 boys and live in Wheaton. 2 of them are lucky enough to attend Hubble, and 1 is still at Wheatsbrook at 4th grade. I was a full-time kindergarten teacher for 5 years. Then I became a stay-at-home mom to raise my boys. And when my youngest started full-day school after kindergarten, I started my own interior design company. I love and adore and respect our district, our teachers, our principals. I remember meeting you, Dr. Schuler, on the steps at Wheatsbrook and welcoming you with open arms to our district when you first came here. I live in Arrowhead. I'm right down the street. We have an amazing community and amazing teachers. Amazing teachers. I was blown away when my oldest started Hubble here last year and was so excited to have my middle son start Hubble this year as well. I just want to start. I had no intention on speaking tonight. I really just wanted to come and listen to what your plan was. I spoke with Schuler first day back after Christmas break, and I just wanted to know what the plan was. There was no plan. The only plan was mitigate, 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 and then we'll mitigate and we'll mitigate some more. That was his new word that he learned, I guess. We've done it. We're mitigating, we're vaccinating, we're cleaning. There's no plan. I just want to know what the plan is. He told me we needed to get rid of the 6 feet distance. Voila. What's the plan? What is our plan? Your district mission statement is to inspire, to educate, to challenge, and to support each child so that they can reach their highest level of learning and personal development. How are we being inspirational to our children when there is no plan? How are we educating them? How are we challenging them? I'll tell you, the biggest challenge in my house is bandwidth and where they need to be, when they need to be there. My 4th grader got a mask break for the first time since we've had cold weather in the last 2 days. He sits in his classroom every single day and has to take his mask down to take a bite of his snack and sit in his classroom to eat his snack. They're not in the gym. They don't get a mask break. They got mask breaks because the weather was nice this week. Then I go to a client's house on the north side at another elementary school in 200 after school hours, and the kids are outside playing with no masks on yesterday. That was so enlightening to watch them play, to just be kids and to be outside. I was out of town for 2 weeks last week taking care of my mother in intensive care. My husband, who runs a sales department, took care of my 3 boys. And he said, so he's not there all the time, he said, the smiles on my middle school boys' faces when they came home from that bus ride for 2 days, he said, was a different kid. 2 different boys than he's seen in the last year. Because they get to go to school. They get to see their friends. This is such a great district. This is such a great building. I feel like we're failing these kids. They're dying inside. Time? Thank you. Please, just let's get a plan. I'm here to support you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our consent agenda. So thank you for the public comments. Community members not attending this meeting in person and who wanted to provide comments to the Board of Education had the opportunity to send an email to the board between the posting of this agenda on Friday and 5 o'clock today. To be acknowledged, emails were to clearly indicate in the subject line that the email was intended for acknowledgement at the March 10th board meeting. We did not receive any emails intended for public comment, so that concludes the public comment portion. Before we get to our consent agenda, Dr. Schuler, any superintendent report tonight?
Yeah, just a couple of things that I wanted to share with the board. Number one, we're going to get to, under our reopening plan, and update tonight. One of the things that we'll spend a little bit of time on is just giving you an update on our vaccine clinic and efforts to vaccinate our staff. But I want to give one quick shout out under my report in talking about that. We've been partnering with Empower Health for that vaccine clinic, and again, just on behalf of our community, our teachers, our school district, there was a little bit of a mishap this week in that any of the vaccine partners has a very specific PIN number through the Illinois Department of Public Health, and the vaccine order for this week, one of the numbers got transposed slightly, and so 1,300 doses of vaccine ended up at a Walmart in Moline, Illinois, instead of our shot clinic at Bauer. But our partners sent a courier service that went to Moline, retrieved it, got it back in time so that we could get those shots in arms today. That clinic runs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so just extraordinary effort and appreciated, because that's that again, it's not just a normal courier service. That vaccine has to obviously stay frozen and be transported the right way. So thank you to Empower for that. And again, we'll give an update as we get into the report tonight. Just want to remind the board and community that next Tuesday, March 16th, is our second workshop with Dr. Doug Bolton. I have that date right, correct? Dr. Bolton is going to be presenting the second in a series for our community. This one focused specifically on stress and some of the strategies for managing stress. We had a great first session with Dr. Bolton, attended by about 250 community members, and so look forward to welcoming Dr. Bolton back. And just a reminder that part of that community engagement session is the thought exchange that launched, as we do continue to try to capture both some of the challenges we see and experience, but some of the great learning that have come through this time. So that thought exchange is going to remain open as a part of that community engagement effort. Third thing is that I do want to let the community know that Jefferson, our early childhood center, every year, in addition to servicing students in our community that have an early learning intervention need, Jefferson does have available some regular preschool spots, some tuition-paying preschool spots, and that sign-up is open for next year. So I imagine that Ms. Leacano will be moving some information out, likely with our board update on that tuition program, but wanted to make mention of it. And then finally, just a quick mention to the board that tomorrow night, Kane County, their division, actually it's not Kane County, it's the Kishwaukee division of the Illinois Association of School Boards. That's a lot of Kane County all the way up to Rockford. They're doing a session for their school board members tomorrow night, and we're going to be presenting or sharing some information on surveillance testing for that Kishwaukee division. So I think that's all I've got, and look forward to, I know, the item that's coming up soon on the agenda in our reopening plan update.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay, our consent agenda, we have 13 items on the consent agenda tonight. I'll read through these one by one. Number one is approval of the AP biology textbook. Number two is approval of a business law textbook. Number three is approval of CAD 1 and CAD 2 online textbook. Number 4 is approval of a consumer education textbook. Number 5 is approval of the geology textbook. Number 6 is approval of sophomore English textbook. Number 7 is approval of a resolution to authorize a transfer, which would be repayable from the interfund loan from working cash fund to education fund. Number 8 is approval of the resolution to authorize a transfer repayable interfund loan from working cash fund to the IMRF fund. Number 9 is approval of extension of activity vehicle lease. Number 10 is approval of purchase outdoor bleachers for Wheaton North High School. Number 11 is approval of bills payable and payroll. Number 12 is approval of minutes from February 10th, 2021, open and closed. February 24th, 2021, the committee of the whole meeting, open, and approval to destroy recordings of closed sessions prior to October 2019 as allowed. And number 13, the last item is approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence, administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Are there any items board members want to remove from this consent agenda? Okay. Any, Dr. Schuler?
Just two quick introductions this evening on the personnel report. You'll be approving the hire of two new administrative positions or replacement administrative positions for next year. So I want to welcome Mr. Anthony Crespo, who's going to be the new assistant principal at Monroe Middle School, and also Mr. Jason Spencer, who will be our new executive director of innovation and technology in the district. So welcome to both of them.
Thank you. Congratulations. Well, can't say congratulations yet. We have to vote. But any other questions or comments from board members?
I had a quick question on the two transfers, the interfund loans. I just want to make very clear to our community that this is something that happens regularly, that there is no budget issue. It's really a cash flow issue from the state, I believe it is, and this is not okay. Sorry.
Not state necessarily so much as just remember in the school district you have two main windows of time where your revenue comes in, consistent with when tax payments come in, and so not uncommon at this point in the fiscal year that that's why you have money in your working cash. As soon as those payments come in at the end of the year, this gets repaid. So it's just a cash flow timing piece that happens in your cycle every year.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board?
Yeah, just to acknowledge the notes put in our folder with the meeting between Rachel Klug and Ian Smith, that we were able to see her feedback, read it, and appreciate that feedback in the process that people go through. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Pointing that out, Rob. So just as a reference for the community, every time we buy textbooks and a lot of other things, we put it on public display for comment for 30 days before we approve it, and we did receive, as Mr. Hanlon said, receive a few comments. Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Booten.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Erickson. Can Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Okay, the consent agenda has been approved as presented. Now I can say congratulations. All right, next up is our oral reports. We have two oral reports tonight. The number one is the Return to Learn work plan update, and then our second one is the social and emotional learning feature. So, Dr. Schuler, I'm going to turn it over to you and your team.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. As we're bringing, John, do you have a, is there a clicker up there, or do I have to use the podium? You have one? All right, we are excited to bring to the board this evening our Return to Learn in-person learning update. I think as Mr. Paulson mentioned in the introduction to the meeting tonight, We were planning to bring this update to the Board of Education this evening anyway. You might remember at the last meeting shared with the board a document that at that point had recently come out from CDC that paved the path for us bringing back revised plans for in-person learning. And so when we initially put the update together tonight, a lot of it was based on that guidance from CDC. And then, as Mr. Paulson mentioned yesterday, in the middle of the day, the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Illinois Association, or ISB, the State Board of Education, released updated guidance that really do have a significant impact on our plans in a very positive way. And so we are excited to provide to you, for you this evening, that update on those plans. So just very quickly, not going to go through these, but important to note that at the beginning of this year, as we set out to build plans for the year, and as those plans have continued to get revised, they've always been based on this set of foundational beliefs, right, that are focused on making sure that we're doing everything we can to safely bring kids back to school, to get them into school, but to make sure that once we have them there, that we can keep them there. And so that continues to be our focus on the update this evening. I also want to state at the onset that taking any mystery out of start of next year, we're going to focus tonight on a return to school update, but we absolutely anticipate, as we're planning forward for the 21-22 school year, that we will have students in school full time in the fall without question. We have begun some of the planning that sits around that, certainly reevaluating what virtual option will still be there. If there's a virtual option, haven't yet heard an update from the state, from ISB, as to whether a virtual option will be required into next year as it is this year. But we've begun that. Certainly have continued the work of our reopening teams to continue to look at what types of mitigations will still be there. You heard an update, the board heard an update on our learning acceleration plans at the last meeting. And as I mentioned, we've launched that thought exchange to continue to look at what are the opportunities that have come from this year of an altered experience that we want to continue to build into to our plans. But what changed? So three things in particular that I want to focus on. As I mentioned yesterday, the Illinois Department of Public Health and ISB released some revised guidance. I'm going to go through their changes here in just a second. Their revised guidance built on the update that was released from CDC, their operational strategy for reopening schools that was released about 2 weeks ago. And then I've also referenced a document from a group called ABC Science. That's actually a group out of Duke University that furthered the CDC guidance and offered some clarification on what it means for schools in terms of how it is that we continue to safely expand opportunities and reopen. The biggest chunk of our adjustment this evening is going to center around this idea of physical distancing, something that we've talked about many times this year. And in the IDPH ISB guidance, they draw from a couple of bodies of research that have brought greater clarity around physical distancing and the impact of physical distancing, the standards that were originally set and how they've been revised. The American Academy of Pediatrics has released information on 3 versus 6 foot physical distancing. The World Health Organization, Mayo Clinic has done some study on it. And then I mentioned or referenced in here some of the other states that have recently shared or released guidance or updates on that. That's going to serve as the foundation. So what changed? Most important in the guidance that got released yesterday is there is a new definition of physical distancing. Whereas physical distancing was strictly defined as 6 feet in previous guidance, it is now defined in the ISB document as 3 to 6 feet with as much as possible. In the ISB guidance, though, they draw a clear distinction between what they call academic spaces or spaces where kids are masked inside of the building, and experiences in the building where kids are not wearing a mask, i.e. eating lunch, right? Our middle and high school plans, even within our hybrid models, have always been full-day experiences as we've returned, and that means that kids are unmasked at portions of their day as they're eating lunch inside of the building. Clear in the ISB guidance, when students are unmasked, 6 feet has to remain the strict protocol. At all other times when they are masked inside of the building, it's 3 to 6 feet. ISB also removed the capacity on a single space. So we've talked many times about 50 as what was a magic number in their previous guidance document, and so it meant regardless of the size of a space as big as the one that we're sitting in right now, they were still capped to 50 people that could be inside of that space. That's been removed, and so again, that has a huge impact as we do think about lunch spaces and some of our other opportunities, in that the capacity is now defined as many students as you can have safely distanced at 6 feet. In the updated guidance, there's reference to vaccination, staff vaccination. It is certainly not a prerequisite for the new guidelines, but it's certainly staff vaccination is identified and recognized as an additional layer of mitigation around reopening plans. A couple of the things that did not change in the documents, so as we go through and provide updates to our plans tonight, a few things that you're going to continue to see. There is still an emphasis on required and universal use of PPE, including masks, for students and for staff. We are still required to contact trace and isolate or quarantine students. The definition of close contact did not change. It is still defined as being inside of 6 feet for a cumulative 15 minutes in a 24-hour period. And again, as I mentioned, quarantine is still required for any close contacts of a confirmed case. School-wide cleaning, disinfecting, maintenance of healthy learning environments did not change. We still need to make sure that we are promoting adherence to hand washing, respiratory etiquette, self-screening still required before students come at the front end of a day. And then there still is reference in the documents to the importance of access to testing so that we can properly identify new cases and make sure that we're executing the exclusion tree and the IDPH guideline. So what are we going to focus on tonight? We're going to give really 4 important updates tonight. Actually 5 important updates tonight. One, I'm going to give a quick update on vaccine, just where we are in terms of our vaccine update. 2, we're going to give an update to our high school plans. What you're going to hear in the update tonight is that as of Monday of next week, all high school students that have chosen to come back 4 days a week will be back 4 days a week at the start of next week, but there's some minor adjustments that we can make, and Dr. Kyle is also going to provide an update on where we are in terms of planning for some of our class of 2021 end-of-year opportunities. We are going to present tonight a 5-day-a-week in-person learning opportunity for our middle school students, and we're going to present tonight to the board some options for extending our current 5-day-a-week elementary in-person model. Again, that model is 5 days a week. What we're going to present tonight are some options for extending that day. And then finally, we're going to present just the notion that we are going to secure some stakeholder impact on the information and options that are presented tonight. All along, as we've asked families to make choices about their learning model or learning experience, they've had opportunities to weigh into that, and we think it's important as we discuss these updates tonight that our community have an opportunity to provide that input. So vaccine, I want to start just quickly with vaccine. So the good news, as I mentioned, is that many District 200 staff have been vaccinated. That's happened through a combination of some of our community sites and our school district partnership. You see up on the screen that little picture. So our clinic at Bauer Elementary School, every time a District 200 staff member gets vaccinated, there's a little sticker that helps to keep track of their waiting time in the recovery area. And so that's just a little picture of all of those stickers that our staff have left that have been vaccinated through our site. We opened our vaccine clinic at Bauer on March the 3rd in partnership with the DuPage County Health Department. They have committed until all of our staff are vaccinated. They've committed a percentage of their weekly allocation. And at our site at Bauer, we're actually vaccinating or serving teachers in 5 school districts. So District 200, 203, 204, Lisle and Westmont School District we're taking care of through our clinic. Our weekly allocation is going to continue until all demand is met. At the time that I built this presentation, I mentioned likely before spring break. It is likely that we will be able to at least bring first dose at that vaccine clinic to a close by the end of next week, just based on where we've been in terms of demand and opportunity. So it does not mean all staff in District 200 have been vaccinated, but they will all have had the opportunity to secure that vaccination either through our site or through a community partnership. I do want to mention to the board that we are still exploring a couple of other partnerships, not for the purpose of expanding vaccine opportunities to our staff, but there are a number of community partners that have been working with school districts to stand up mass or big vaccination clinics for community members. We know that in DuPage County alone, there were 270,000 people in the 1B vaccine group. That was before it got extended to where there's now another part of 1B as well. And so we have been discussing with one of the community partners the possibility of standing up a couple of bigger clinics to also support the community in some of our off hours schools. We have decent sized facilities to be able to support that effort, and so we are working on that. One other thing that I just want to mention before we jump into those 3 level specific updates in the ISB document as well, I do want to share or mention that there is some recommendation for travel in the ISB document. I want to say clearly at the onset, there are not formal quarantine orders from our local health departments tied to travel, but they do reference the CDC guidance. And I think, again, just important to note with spring break coming up, that CDC does currently require testing for all international travelers before they come back into the United States. And then they do also suggest or offer advice that anybody traveling out of state consider getting tested as they come back into state within 3 to 5 days, and possibly stay home for 7 days. As the health department reminds us, it's not necessarily travel that's inherently a dangerous activity. It's what you do on that travel experience. And so, again, I think just important to mention this as we approach spring break, that that was a part of the guidance. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kyle, who's going to give the high school update. Dr. Kyle?
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. Thank you, school board. I wanted to share a couple more thank yous because about 2 months ago when we started looking at bringing high school students back more than when we started in October, we really presented a plan to all of you that was to start with the needs-based students and then to look at seniors and go from seniors to juniors, sophomores, freshmen. So I thought. Realistically, I didn't know if we'd get past seniors or juniors because I kind of thought everybody would take that. Is it not on? Okay. I kind of thought that everybody would take that opportunity to come back 4 days a week. But I want to thank some people who have worked really hard. We've had about 13 meetings with our high school reopening committee made up of teachers, administrators, and we've had some assistant principals who have been scheduling and rescheduling to make this happen. So last time I thanked Julie O. I also want to thank Lori Campos, Dan Korntoyer, Scott McDermott, Alexia Ellett, Julie Pavlini, and Matt Biskin. They've been working really hard to make sure that we started with the needs-based students and started getting all the needs-based students in at both high schools on the 19th of February. Then also in February, on February 8th, we surveyed all 4 grade levels of kids. We brought the seniors back first on the 22nd of February at North and South on the 1st. And then we brought the juniors back and freshmen, juniors at South and freshmen at Wheaton North. We completed that on the 3rd. And then also right now, what Dr. Schuler shared is on March 15th, we'll have all sophomores and juniors at North and all sophomores and freshmen at South attending 4 days a week. What we found, which was interesting, is that when we asked people to come, even when they said yes, we had about a 10% not show up rate of kids that said yes. Maybe parents said yes, kids said they weren't coming. So this next slide I just wanted to show is kind of where we're at as board members, even community members. You might wonder, like, where are we at? How many kids are coming back? As of probably Tuesday, we're at 21% of all the kids that picked hybrid 2 days a week. 21% of them chose to come back 4 days a week. As of probably 2 hours before this meeting, we're at about 1,000 students between both high schools that do attend 4 days a week. We still have more people that want to come. We have people now that have basically been like, oh, kids are showing up. Maybe I made the wrong choice. So we even have a waiting list at both high schools. We still have that 37% are still fully remote, and we still have 42% are going 2 days a week. But we do anticipate that top number to go up, and the ISB guidelines that did change, that's going to help us increase more students if and when they decide they would like to come back. So going back one slide, I didn't want to skip over this piece. We're also going to start working with our high school reopening teams, probably in the next 2 weeks, to start planning next year. And our goal with this committee is to establish a 5-day in-person school day, and those ISP guidelines are really going to be helpful to get us to that point for next year. So last piece, Dr. Schuler mentioned at the last meeting, the highlight of my day today was working with parents and students from the class of 2021 committee. We had an opportunity to meet today. We talked about in-person graduation set for May 29th. The good news about the new ISBE guidelines is that now it's 20%. An outdoor event, you could have 20% attendance. So what I will tell the board right now, and what we told the class of 2021, is we will get as many parents or guardians in per grad that we can at our graduation. So we're working right now on how many people can we get in to both stadiums. Senior survey was sent out on March 4th. Senior survey closed on March 8th. We had 60% of all the seniors from both high schools did fill that out. What was great is the committee and the students and parents that were on the committee really mirrored what the survey data came back. So now we have the data, and now, like in the next 2 weeks, we're going to put that data to work, and we're going to put together some excellent opportunities to really put the spotlight on the class of 2021 and give them opportunities. Like I said a couple board meetings ago, some of them have not been together with every classmate since last year before the pandemic. So our goal is to give them opportunities to be together. We also have some pretty cool links, but we want to make sure, and even the committee agreed, before we put those links out to everybody, we want to make sure we take all the data from the survey, create the opportunities, and it'll be kind of like a senior week moving up to graduation. Graduation being the culmination, most important piece, but we're going to have things for the class of 2021 to do all the way up. So without further ado, I'll pass over, and then at the end, traditional school day. That's what we're pushing for at all 3 levels, but also high school. I'll pass it to Melissa Murphy for middle school.
Can we do questions for Charlie before we go to the next? Can we do questions for everybody for the high school?
Sure, if you want to stay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, Charlie. So, with the new guidance we have, guidance manifests itself in the high school plan. So I don't understand. Sorry. So we got new guidance.
Correct.
On distancing, and I don't understand how that has impacted our plan at the high school level. I can see it for the middle and elementary in the deck, but for high school, I don't understand.
Yeah, most significantly, as we've opened up the opportunity for high school students to be there 4 days a week, because we have been adhering to a strict 6-foot distancing guideline up to this point,
Yep.
there are some circumstances where a student for one of their classes may be in an overflow space. If
Right.
the room is already at capacity at 6 feet, they're attending perhaps one of their classes remotely from a space inside of the building. And so it does two things. One, I think it will open up the opportunity to eliminate those overflow spaces and simply get kids into their classrooms. Two, as Dr. Kyle mentioned, we now have a wait list as we've worked through. So as of Monday, all of the students that initially answered in the survey that they did want to come back 4 days a week will be in the building, but we're getting a second round of requests that we will be able to work with and accommodate as we're looking at the distancing guideline, because we can get more kids in in each room.
Yeah. So do we have a date yet when we might be able to do that? Have we worked through that yet?
Yeah, we certainly have looked at that. I mean, I think, one, we want to get everybody back in next week and make sure that we're operating with everybody that answered in that first round of survey. I think our thought process around it is to look at the week after spring break, when we come back from spring break, to open up beyond 6 feet. But I'd say hang on to that question until we get through middle school presentation, if you wouldn't mind, because I think that'll bring some clarity around some potential timelines.
I have a question. So I'm trying to understand the 42%. So we surveyed, but 42% of families that were attending in hybrid are still wanting to stay hybrid. Am I understanding that correctly?
So previously, you had, go back to, Melissa, can you go back to that chart real quick? Thank you. So previously, you had two groups of students, right? Students that were attending in the hybrid schedule, that was a combination of the 42 and the 21%.
Okay.
So you previously had 63% of your students in hybrid, 37% in full remote. You now have 37% of all of your high school students still in full remote, 42% of all of your high school students remaining in the two-day-a-week hybrid option, and 21% of your high school students, all of your high school students who are attending in the 4-day-a-week plan.
So did we get feedback as to why? I'm curious, because we've heard so much. We want our kids back full-time, we want our kids back full-time, but yet we've offered it, or at least 4 days, and people are saying they still want just the 2. I'm just curious, did we get any feedback as to why so many are choosing to still stay at 2?
Yeah. Dr. Cobb, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. The committee that we're working on, class of 2021, and students that we've spoken with, there are some seniors that are at the point where they're, 2 days a week is good. They're ready to move on to the next level. There are some students that do enjoy coming 2 days a week and live streaming 2 days a week. Some students have jobs and other obligations on some of the days. So I know what the feedback we've gotten is we've given everybody an opportunity to come back if they want to. Like I said at the start of the presentation, I didn't know if we'd get past the juniors because I just assumed everybody would jump at it, but not everybody is. And, right now it's about 21% of that hybrid percentage want to go 4 days a week. So some of the feedback we got from students is they've heard from their classmates that some said, they like this setup, they like the 2 days a week, they like live streaming. Others, the 21%, they want to be there 4 days a week.
I have a question too. I'm confused. I thought I heard you say we've got everybody attending 4 days a week who wants to, but I also thought I heard you say there's a waiting list at each school. Can you explain?
Yeah, so when we originally surveyed back on February 8th, when we originally surveyed, some people said no, we just like 2 days a week. So now that we're at the last level, which are the last 2 grade levels at both high schools, we've had, it's close to about 100 from each high school, parents that said no on that survey that now said, I want my kid to come back 4 days a week. So that's the waiting list, and that's the group after Monday. We're going to see how that is and then bring the waiting list in as well. So we're going to continue to bring kids in that want to be there 4 days a week.
And would we have had room for them even before the guidelines on spacing changed?
It would have been difficult. A couple areas that were struggle until yesterday was lunchrooms. A room like this can have way more than 50, and we were kind of stifled by that. So now that that change has happened, we feel like we can handle the lunchroom even with still 6 feet social distancing because kids are taking masks off. So it actually has helped us. I can't speak specifically if we could have brought all the waiting list in without that, but with that, both high school principals said that was a game changer.
Okay, and then my last question is, what's the process for people deciding maybe they want to be back after all? Is that a daily, weekly? Are you constantly going to have more and more people adding, or are you setting goalposts for, when you got to make these decisions?
Well, originally we thought we were done with the last 2 classes, but now that there's been more interest and now that we've had some opportunity from the state to lower the distance from 6 to 3, we haven't talked about when that's going to close, but as a high school group, we'll probably get together and talk about that because it just dropped yesterday.
Okay.
We haven't talked about when that'll happen, but right now, if we can accommodate, we're trying to accommodate at both high schools.
I have a question. For the 21% who opted to come back 4 days, roughly, I don't need exact numbers, how did that come out as far as class? Like, which class had the most requested down to the least requested? Does that make sense?
Freshman was the highest and seniors were the least.
Huh.
Okay, interesting. At both high schools?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have a question on, is there any possibility of high schools going to 5 days a week this school year?
That's a good question. And what I would say is one of the things high school didn't have at the start of this, and we still don't have, is we don't have a virtual academy. So we have all of those, 37% of those fully remote e-learners that are still there, and that Wednesday was designed not only for e-learners, but also all students that attend in person. But that Wednesday is also designed to help those e-learners that never come in the building and are never connected. So right now we are planning on 4 days, with that Wednesday still being kind of like what we call a blended learning support day, where parents and students can get help for their children. But it also was designed because of those e-learners. And that's not going away with any of the ISBE this year. We plan on changing next year, but not this year.
And then one other question I have is a little more, I guess, maybe philosophical about whether we're going to be mandated or not to offer e-learning next year. Have we discussed whether we're going to consider that regardless of whether it's mandated?
Yes, we have. And yes, I would anticipate it will be in our programming in some form. And again, I want to remind the board, you had e-learning, right? You had through ELO a variety of fully online and blended programs at your high school already, and I don't see those opportunities going away. So I think there's 2 avenues for some blended virtual experience. We certainly have heard from some families whose students, for a variety of reasons, needed and did really well in a remote experience, and again, whether it be a short-term or a longer-term need, would benefit from that opportunity being a part of a system. And again, by choice at the high school, I don't see some of the blended experiences that we're already building going away as well. Again, I think as you're talking about high school students, there's tremendous benefit to some flexibility in time and place around learning that I think some of those. So yes, I think it will be a part of our system in some form or function as we move forward. But I think under a very different set of parameters than obviously it was this year, where it was mandated as an option if you had in-person learners in your building.
Thank you.
One more just follow up on that. Would we be looking at going with like an Edgenuity or another company like that versus asking for concurrent teaching? So I know that there's been definitely challenges with that for our teachers and that.
Correct. Again, I think as we built virtual programs in the past, it did not involve concurrent instruction. I think whatever we were to do moving forward would not likely involve concurrent.
So I want to go back to the 37%. So we still have over a third of our students at high school that are going to be learning remotely. So just a clarification, that's not going to, just because we have more students coming back for more days a week, it doesn't necessarily change the in-person instructional model, correct? I mean, teachers are still going to be doing the live stream teaching to students in class and students remotely. It's going to be a different blend, which we've heard from teachers is a challenge. But we can't forget that we still got 37% of our students who still need all the resources and the instruction and the access to teachers, you know. So I just want to reinforce that to us as well as people in our community. We have to create a model that works for all kids all the time. So that's my really only comment in terms of the high school.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, let's hear about middle school.
All right, this evening I'm going to be starting with the timeline that was presented to you on February 10th. And so I do have two major updates on this timeline. So first and foremost, in terms of the item that's talking about evaluating and expanding the number of students that attend 4 days a week, I'm happy to report to you, you now have 257 additional students that attend 4, but actually most of them attend 5 days a week. And so our middle schools have been working diligently over the last month to add students based on a set criteria that was jointly decided upon with teachers and administrators. This evening, we are going to be spending our time on the item that was added to this work plan after our last meeting. And that is right here, to create a plan that allows all hybrid students to attend 5 days a week. So a reminder for board and community, here is our current middle school plan. We do have 80% of our middle school students enrolled in our hybrid program. That is the largest percentage of students that are enrolled in an in-person experience across our levels. This has allowed us to operate, or has required us, I should say, to operate in the hybrid schedule because we have our students in 2 cohorts, and that allowed us to have 6 feet social distancing in all settings within our building. Our students have been attending full days. That is from 8 to 3 on the days they have been in person. And because of that 6 feet distancing, we have had few positive, when there is a confirmed positive case, it has resulted in few close contacts. As we have already discussed, the new guidance that came out yesterday has redefined the physical distancing definition to be 3 to 6 feet for students and fully vaccinated staff. So tonight, we are presenting a plan for full in-person learning at the middle school level for this school year. That plan includes specific information around physical distancing and the data, what happens when we combined our cohorts, and it also will outline the operational impacts of this plan. So we began this work immediately. After we had our February 10th meeting, our staff has been working diligently to put this plan together. And that entailed looking at combining groups A and B and what that physical distancing looks like. So when we do combine groups A and B, we will still have 38.5% of all of our middle school classes will still remain at 6 feet. 60.5% of our middle school classes will be between 4 and 5 feet with both cohorts attending. Here you're actually going to see the detailed information for the 800 in-person middle school classes across our 4 buildings. When you look at this information, it's broken out by the percentage of classes at 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet and 6 feet. You're going to see in the 3 feet column, there are 8 classes that would be at 3 feet with the combined cohort. There will be an impact on close contacts with reduced physical distancing. When we reduce the physical distancing, the number of close contacts will increase. There will be a need to exclude more students and staff due to exposure, even though our mitigation strategies would be occurring. We have been in contact with another school district that combined cohorts in January, and based on what we learned from that school district, and this was at a middle school level, they have had about 8 to 25 close contacts for each positive case. And so we're using their information to make that estimate for ourselves. And just a reminder, but this was discussed earlier, this is the definition that the CDC has laid out for a close contact is someone who is within 6 feet for that cumulative 15 minutes over a 24-hour period. We have provided this chart for you so you really have an idea of what our data has looked like since January with regards to the number of students that have been in quarantine and the number of positive cases. And so when you look at this chart, what we have done is we have, for each week, we have taken the highest number of middle school students that had a confirmed positive case, and we have taken the highest number of students that were in quarantine each week. So the red outlines the positive cases. You can see that those bars are much smaller than the blue bars. But we have had between a range of 3 and 11 students that have been considered positive or confirmed positive case. And we have certainly seen over that course of time that that blue bar is larger than the red bar each week. So,
Melissa, can you go back for one quick second? So again, I'm just making sure, because I think it's critically important that we understand that, well, there certainly is a research base that supports the fact that we can operate safely at 3 feet. So from a potential transmission perspective inside of our building, strong research base that supports it's safe. There's just a practical impact. I want to very much make sure both the board and the community understand about that, and that the relationship between that red and blue bar is going to change, right? That blue bar is going to grow exponentially with positive cases, because right now, while we do have some quarantines right now at the middle school, our close contact issues predominantly come from the bus, where we have students that have to be less than 6 feet apart if they're riding the bus to school. And so now when you add into it the numbers from the building itself, there just will be higher quarantine numbers, right? Until we arrive at a place where that red bar is non-existent, meaning we don't have positive cases. Every week we've had positive middle school cases. There's just not been a week where we haven't, and we've been successful with mitigation. So again, just want to be really clear. Some of the logistics around combining cohorts are manageable. We're going to get into some of the operational pieces, but this is just the very practical impact that I want to make sure is explicitly clear.
Okay.
Just on this data, are these quarantine cases primarily a result of a close contact?
They are students who are quarantined, not necessarily through a close contact to another student. They could be students who are on quarantine because a family member tested positive, and so they have been, again, largely in our buildings right now. I don't know of a middle school situation where you have a close contact as a result of classroom placement. You have some as a result of bus, as I mentioned, but not from classrooms. So I don't anticipate that kind of the blue bar that sits there goes away. I think as you potentially talk about an additional 8 to 25 close contacts, that would build on top of that blue bar. And again, it's just a practical reality. And I think as we've investigated and talked to districts that have made this decision or tested the waters certainly on this decision, and not necessarily experiencing a lot of actual transmission inside of the building, but there are more substantial numbers. There are going to be, right? You can't avoid the close contact because that definition does not change.
And just to reiterate, quarantine is 10 days. Correct?
Quarantine right now,
Right
yes,
now.
10 days is the minimum amount of quarantine. It could be 10 or 14 days. Sometimes depends on individual circumstance and situation, but minimum 10 days.
If a student produces a negative COVID test, does that shorten the quarantine at all, or
10,
no?
10 days is still the
10,
minimum.
okay.
Yeah, there is a path now, certainly at the staff or adult level around vaccinated individuals, but for non-vaccinated students or staff, it would still be 10 days.
So I want to kind of clarify, middle school is unique. Middle school, we have a virtual academy. Middle school students who've opted for the virtual academy, different teachers, different classes, basically a different school. When we do this plan, students who have to quarantine will be learning remotely. Not in the virtual academy, but they'll be learning remotely from their teachers in the classroom. Correct?
Yeah, very likely, yeah.
Okay, so my observation there is because we shifted to the live stream option at the middle school, that makes this easier? Is that a fair statement? If we had not shifted and we had to quarantine now, we wouldn't be set up for the remote instruction if we make these changes.
Yep. Yeah, you definitely have an option, right, as you talk about this. Again, I think the long-term goal would be to eliminate the concurrent instruction, but again, I don't know that you're going to do that practically if you have higher numbers of quarantined students. I think it's going to have to stay intact so that there's a learning option, obviously, for students that are quarantined. And again, you know, there again is just a practical reality that sometimes your being quarantined is just going to be a function of where you happen to be seated in the classroom, right? Not through necessarily a choice individual students are making, but just a reality of, depending as Mrs. Murphy goes through a few different kind of seating configurations, I think there's some things that we can intentionally do to create some barriers and buffers to avoid massive numbers within each classroom, but middle school students are in up to 8 different classrooms during the day, plus bus and some of those experiences. So, Mrs. Murphy, go ahead.
Can I just one more question, because I just want to make sure I'm understanding the 80%. So anybody who is not in virtual academy at the middle school level is hybrid. They are not.
Correct.
It's not like high school where all of a sudden they say, well, we'd like to stay home and learn. I mean, that's not a. That's
Right
not
now,
even
you
an
are
option.
either hybrid or you're
Okay.
full-time in virtual academy. So 80% of our students are at their home building in a hybrid program.
So really, the only time they would be at home is for a quarantine situation
Correct.
if they were hybrid. Just wanted to clarify that.
And that's unique to middle school, right?
Correct.
I mean, we don't, high school and elementary, we don't have the situation where we will likely have both remote learning and a separate virtual academy. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure our community understands that this is a unique situation in middle school.
So when we talk about those practical impacts, we just went back to this chart again, and so we highlighted the cells in yellow where there would be a close contact because of the distancing and the definition of a close contact. It would be in the classrooms where there's 3 feet, 4 feet, or 5 feet. But as Dr. Schuler introduced, we can adjust the configuration of the desks to reduce the number of close contacts within a classroom. And so here you're seeing a model of what could be. And so arranging desks so that there's 6 feet between the student that's in front of them or a student that is behind them, but 4 feet between the student that is sitting on either side. And so in an arrangement like this, you would have a range of 1 or 2 close contacts in a classroom situation like this. Here's another possible configuration where there's basically two kinds of groups of desks or two rows where there's 4 feet between the two rows but there's 6 feet rather between those two groups. And so instead of having 8 close contacts from a desk situation, then we have a range between 2 and 5 students. So these aren't the only models that could be, but these are just 2 possible options we're presenting this evening, and this is the kind of work that we want to do with our buildings and our teachers and their specific classrooms to think through how can we still adhere to that 6 feet to the greatest extent possible. So moving into the second part of the plan is around those operational impacts. So the middle school team has identified areas in our current plan that will need to be adjusted when we combine cohort A and cohort B for full in-person learning. These items include additional furniture needs, lunch, PE, new fully remote learners and live streaming, and also contact tracing. So I'm going to walk through each of those and give you more details. So first, additional desks. We did move a substantial amount of desks from our middle schools to our elementary buildings because pre-pandemic, many of our elementary buildings, especially our primary classrooms, utilized tables. And so our middle schools were kind and lended those desks to the elementary level. Additionally, we replaced our lunchroom tables with desks. And so each of our middle schools currently have 3 lunchroom spaces. And so there were 150 desks that were used for those lunchroom spaces. We are currently working with our high school to identify desks that are not being used at the high school that can be moved to the middle school. But with this as well, we are going to need time to work with our staff so that they can get into their classroom and work on those configurations that we discussed in the previous slides. Lunch. The ISB guidance does say that we should have strict adherence to 6 feet physical distancing when face masks are removed. ISB guidance that came out yesterday did lift that 50 people in a space. So that does help us. It helps us in a space like this at Hubble, which is our cafeteria. So we are able to expand the number of students that would be in this space, still at 6 feet between students. Our buildings with smaller cafeterias, though, they are going to have to take a lunch period and split it in half. So half the students at that grade level would be outside, while half would be inside eating, and there would be a swap during that time. And we would have additional space that would need to be determined when there be inclement weather due to the additional students that would be attending. PE. Currently, some of our PE spaces are used as lunch spaces and would need to still remain as lunch spaces. Therefore, we're competing with that space to be available for PE. And with combined cohorts, once again, when we're unable to be outside, that'll just make it difficult to do the kinds of activities that we do enjoy doing in PE. Contact tracing, as we have discussed, contact tracing will increase. That work around that will increase, and so we put on here additional staff may be necessary to support the middle school in that contact tracing work. We also have identified an impact around full remote learning. Our virtual academy enrollment is at capacity. Additionally, with a return to full in-person learning, it would be our staff preference to reduce live streaming. And also, we are going to need to problem solve if we have families that are currently enrolled in the hybrid option who do not want to be enrolled once that we make this shift or change. So we would have to do some problem solving on what that remote option looks like. So in terms of next steps, we are making a recommendation that we would get feedback from our families and our staff about a return to full in-person learning after spring break. And we have also indicated on here the board would determine a meeting to review the data and make a decision. And just a final reminder once again, for next school year, we are planning to offer a traditional school day, 5 full days a week.
Board members have any questions on the middle school proposed change or
I do.
planned change?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It doesn't matter.
Go ahead.
Keith? Okay. I'm trying to understand the chart with the classes with close contacts. So am I to assume then that Monroe has the greatest population? Because when I added up the classes, Edison, it looks like, has 78 classes, and Monroe looks like they have 279 classes. Is that because there's a significant difference in number of students at the schools?
You're talking about, that's just sections within the building. So yes, Monroe has the most sections because it has the largest population.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if I'm understanding this, the close contacts, Monroe has the biggest liability of close contacts.
No, because the biggest percentage of their classes actually is potentially still at 6 feet.
Oh, I've got it backwards.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I've got it backwards. Okay. That was my only question.
And I do, just caveat to this, I want to offer this, right, that we work through this analysis really looking at square footage inside of classrooms. There are definitely going to be some unique circumstances inside of an individual classroom where a particular type of built-in furniture or seating may actually impact this number. So we may have more square footage, but for instance, a science room with science tables built in, that actually in and of itself makes it difficult to fully configure furniture in whatever way you want to. So there may be a few other limitations that actually kind of shift these numbers slightly, and if anything, move some more from 6 feet to less than 6 feet just based on a practical application inside the classroom. So again, just something to work through. All resolvable, right? We can work through the challenges, but again, I think the goal is to be, if we do this, to be very thoughtful on how we try to organize so that as much as possible you can sort of minimize those, or not minimize, maximize the little pods inside of the classroom that ultimately minimize the number of quarantine situations.
I have a question. Can you clarify how we're using live streaming in middle school? If we have a fully remote, a fully separate virtual academy, is live streaming currently only being used for kids who are in quarantine?
No, because the live streaming right now, you have a hybrid schedule. So half of your kids are in person, half your kids are remote on a given day, and those students that are on the remote version of their hybrid are live streaming currently.
So if we're only going to be live streaming to those students who are in quarantine, I see the preference for reducing live streaming, but is that just totally dependent upon who needs it at that point?
Correct.
Okay.
And it could vary by section, right? It could be even for an individual teacher that based on how this plays out, at any given point in time, a teacher could have sections where there's no need for live streaming and sections where there's a heavier need if there happen to be 4 or 5 students quarantined out of the same classroom.
Can you help me with the characteristics of our high school programming today that allows, or that won't allow, a 5-day-a-week experience? I think it's because we have a larger population of students who will be streaming at high school than middle school. Is that correct? The correct assumption?
So again, at high school, and to come back to, you have almost 40% of your students that are full remote learners, but are learning from the teachers inside of their classrooms. And so you will always have a circumstance, even if you get to a point where hybrid groups were combined at the high school fully, at least 40% of your students are still live streaming into the classroom every day.
It's per day.
That's why that recommendation
Yeah,
sat
yeah.
different at the high school than it does at the middle school.
Thank you.
At least at the onset in our plan.
I have a couple questions. This actually applies to both that we've heard, middle school and high school. The teachers, are they on board with what these plans are? I know because we had some feedback a few months ago that we weren't, that the teachers' voices weren't being heard. Are they part of this? And are the teachers feeling good about these plans?
Yeah, so I'm going to be very, very honest and clear with you. When the board asked us, based on the original CDC guidance, to work on a plan, right? We started immediately working on a plan. That plan did involve a work on the plan. Largely, though, your middle school teachers are hearing this tonight for the very first time in the same way that the community is. So I don't think I could give you an honest answer around that, Dave. Again, I think largely our teachers and our staff want to see students, and so I think as there is a path to do it safely, certainly within the confines of the guidance. I hope and I believe that teachers will want to see students in their classroom.
Okay. So there was a comment made about talking to other districts. I just want to make the point. I know that work's been going on all along. We hear a lot from, why aren't we talking to these people, that people, and so it was mentioned tonight. I just wanted to kind of point out and emphasize, and I know that those conversations have been going on, probably maybe not since last March, but probably since last April. Then in regards to the desks, I know that one possibility is to buy more desks, right? Mm-hmm. But are there desks available? Like, if we needed to buy 500 desks, can we get 500 desks in a week, or is there going to be a supply shortage like there was of, partitions back when the grocery stores were putting partitions in?
Yeah, we will work through that detail. That will not be an impediment that stops you from implementing this plan.
Yeah. Okay.
And Dave, let me just come back to just again on the surface. It's not an exact easy one-to-one comparison. Again, 40% of your high school students are choosing to learn remotely for the rest of the year, and there are enough desks inside of our high school to accommodate all of our students. So there are desks. It's just a matter of making sure we're able to pull them from the right places to get them to the middle school.
Okay. And then the last thing, as it stands right now for middle school with this plan, you're either one or the other. You're either in the virtual academy or you're full 5 days. But I think what I heard Melissa say is, depending on the feedback, we may have to come up with a third way of teaching, right? Depending on, if there's a lot of people that aren't comfortable with 5 days a week in person, we'll have to talk about that.
Sure, yeah, and again, I would certainly hope that's not the case, but I'd just remind the board, right, this year you are required to offer a remote option anytime you have students learning in person. And so as this shifts the plan at the middle school, I think in a way that can be very positive for students, if it does create a situation where some families are not comfortable with this as the in-person option, we have to accommodate them in a remote experience.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, just to summarize this, I'm learning how immensely complex this is, especially at the middle school level. I didn't even think about the furniture solution decisions we made, back in July and August. Impact have rippled all the way through to today. So, I know we're going to get emails before this meeting is over saying we should have flipped the switch and had it all resolved yesterday, but I think it's important to work through all these issues. I do think it's important that I think the last slide is going to talk about getting some community input or parent feedback on this. In my conversations with a few other districts that have gone this way, they have received feedback from parents that were not comfortable going less than 6 feet. So it's not a slam dunk, so to speak, that everybody's going to be thrilled. So we're going to have to work through that. But I think, for me personally, I'm sure the whole board is, we'd love to have this happen as fast as possible, but it is complex, and we have some things we have to work through. So I'll hear the rest of the presentation and the strategy to get some feedback from the community. But, like I said, from my perspective, I'd love to get it happen tomorrow, but it's not feasible. It's not practical. So, okay, elementary school.
All right. Hello, members of the Board of Education. Really excited to present our elementary update this evening. And I actually want to start with the celebration for our district, for our families, and for you, the Board of Education, around the consistent in-person learning opportunity that we've been able to offer our students this year. There are 35 school districts in DuPage County that offer elementary programming. Of those 35 school districts, there are 2 districts that have successfully delivered a 5-day-a-week in-person learning experience since the start of the school year for 4 hours or more without having to take a pause, an adaptive pause, without delaying their start significantly into the month of September, or shutting down a classroom or a school. And District 200 is one of those 2 districts. The other district, doing great work, has 1 elementary school. So that's really a reflection of the work that's been done by our teachers, our union leadership, our administration, our principals, but really also a support and a commitment to in-person learning for our youngest students. So thank you for that, and also just want to recognize the great work and what's been offered to our students. As we celebrate and recognize that, I think it's always important to be planning, as you do, and offering and thinking about what's next and what can we continue to give our students. And certainly, you asked for a plan as we come back to look at options for extending the elementary school day. And I intend to take you through 2 options, but talk through the 3 options that we will be asking for input or feedback on from our community. And I'm going to go into detail on each of the first 2 options here. The first is looking at extending our current elementary school day to 9 to 1:30, so extending it by 30 minutes. As a reminder, our current in-person day is 9 to 1, and the majority and the focus of that is really on our core academic time. So we will talk about what an extended school day by 30 minutes of 9 to 1:30 could be. Option 2 would be a shift to a more traditional school day, really extending that day out from a 9:35 to 3:30 option, which would be 5 days a week also. And we'll talk and explore what some of the positives and some of the challenges that could come with that. And then option 3 is the continuing with what we currently have. So let's dive in. The first option of extending the current school day by 30 minutes would add that additional 30 minutes, and you might be thinking, what could that be utilized for, right? We worked closely with our principals, and really one of the things that we know has been missing consistently for our kids is PE, art, and music. So when we looked at that additional 30 minutes, what could be added? One thing that we could guarantee during that time is a daily 15 to 20 minute daily special. Now, much of that special time would potentially be a daily PE, but there's an opportunity to mix in some art and music. Some of our buildings are already doing this. Some may be having kids go to PE for 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes. Some may not. With this addition, we could guarantee it across our board for 15 to 20 minutes. So while certainly not the full traditional experience that kids get, it would be more consistently than what they're getting right now when we look at the specials. Another piece to keep in mind, with extending the day by 30 minutes, we would not be looking to add lunch into the day. So I want to make sure to note that. The additional time could also be utilized, though, for connecting further with students and offering social emotional learning opportunities. This could also offer up potentially some additional blocks for support and intervention, whether that be academic or whether that be in the social work space. So it also could give us an opportunity to extend some social studies and science lessons as well. So there is, well 30 minutes is some time. It's not the complete time, but we do know that our students would be at school for quite a while. And so certainly right now our kids have snack at school. We would recommend that students have a heartier snack because of the time that they would be in person without eating a lunch. The transition to this plan could occur more quickly than going to a full school day. So that's another piece just to keep in mind. At the bottom there, you'll see what's negated from this in-person schedule versus a traditional day. The 60-minute lunch recess period, approximately 30 minutes of classroom teacher-student contact time versus a full traditional day. However, one thing that I will note is that right now in our 9-to-1 day, our teachers and students go pretty intensely to get their core content in. So that negated 30 minutes or so in a day where we're going in a traditional day could be used up, especially with our younger students, with transitions and moving to specials, moving to lunch, some of those things. And then the additional art and music. In a traditional day, art and music is anywhere from 25 for music, 45 minutes for art. So what are some of the pluses and minuses of extending the current school day? It offers students a daily special, so that opportunity we think could be really, really positive. Some of our initial feedback, even from parents on our thought exchange, is that opportunity for PE or some arts and music is valuable. And many times those specialists at our buildings are some of the most influential people in our kids' lives. They're some of the mainstays for some of our kids, right? So that added time for students to interact with teachers and specials teachers is certainly a plus and a positive. The potential addition for academic and SEL support, albeit it may be individualized in some pockets, certainly could be a positive. This also reduces the asynchronous learning time that would be needed at home. As a reminder, our 9-to-1 plan right now, 4 hours for the in-person, but then there's an hour of asynchronous time, which is typically given by our specials teachers and then a smaller portion by our classroom teachers. This would reduce it to 30 minutes. This plan versus our more traditional day plan would not come with any additional hiring, and there would be some schedule impact as we work to get that guaranteed special in, but it would be a limited impact versus a traditional day. The minuses of this is that all of our students would have a heavier snack, but it would extend the time that students go without a full lunch. And there's a potential for some of our students to demonstrate fatigue at the end of the day. Not only physical fatigue, but maybe the ability to attend. And when you think about in an elementary school, you have students all the way from age 5 to 11. There could be different impacts when you're not giving larger chunks of breaks, like a lunch or like a 45-minute art or some of those pieces that break up the day. Option 2 is a move to a more traditional school day. So as a point of a reminder, as I say, a more traditional school day, we've been really clear that as we move into next year, we plan to offer a full 5-day-a-week, full traditional school day. This would be a transition out of what has been a sustainable program at the elementary level to get us to where we believe is a more traditional school day that covers the majority of the time that we had previously pre-pandemic. So what would that look like at this point? It would run 9:35 to 3:30, 5 days per week, offering PE daily, art 1 time a week, and music 1 time a week. And it would also offer lunch in person in school. This would also include an optional classroom recess. We have really beefed up the PE time on this to be 30 minutes daily to give our kids really a structured opportunity to engage, but also a social opportunity and an opportunity to connect. This plan would come with additional hiring though. The additional hires would be in PE, art, music, and lunchroom supervisors. To transition this plan, we would need 15 PE staff, 1 music teacher, 1.25 art staff, and approximately 40 to 45 lunch supervisors. I think it's worth noting that a strategy around doing this is you look at this, and we certainly would work to get certified PE, music, and art staff. However, realistically, a part of that would be also trying to fill these positions with permanent subs, right? We have permanent substitutes at all of our buildings and a bank of some of those folks that have worked consistently in our buildings, and that is one strategy that we would utilize and have them partner with our PE staff, have them partner with our schools to be able to deliver the PE opportunities. So I think that's worth noting. And I think it's also worth noting in the additional hire piece, 40 to 45 lunch supervisors, we would be reaching out to our community, some of the people that we know, some people that have been in our buildings before, but some that may be interested in offering this support so our kids can eat lunch in school and be supervised. The other piece that I think is important to note, right now at the elementary level, either of these options that we've talked about, we are still able to maintain the 6-foot distancing piece. So as we've rolled out our plans, our 6-foot distancing at this point is not compromised. This is a significant shift to the in-person schedule. So the student impact, one piece that I want to make note, while the traditional day gives our kids some great opportunities, it does change the time of intervention services. So students that are receiving either reading intervention, special education services, whether that be from their resource teacher, so it could be extra math or reading help, it could be speech services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, social work. This certainly will change that individual time for most individual students when it's served, and it could change the service provider as well. And the reason for that being, when we built our plan this summer, we built the virtual academy and we built the in-person plan. But we stretched our human resources really as much as we could to make operationally both programs run, which means between the virtual academy and the in-person experience, we have specialists serving both, right? So this would come with some schedule changes, right? So I think it's just worth noting that you're gonna have some significant shifting to the in-person schedule, not only for those students, but really for all students. This is gonna change when they have their subjects, change all those pieces. The other piece is that the lunch schedule will run longer than a typical year. Even though the 50 cap has been removed, we still have to get 6 feet between students. So space is a commodity in our elementary buildings. Some have more space than others, but you're still gonna be running a lunch schedule basically by grade level throughout the day as you look for that supervision. So at times, your PE could be competing for some indoor space on inclement weather days. What are the pluses and minuses with the traditional school day? This gives our students access to the full school day for the most part. Gets them back with PE, art, music, gives them an opportunity to have that break for lunch, gives an opportunity for an optional classroom recess, and certainly being in school more and having access to these pieces, there's some natural SEL that's built in. There's increased social opportunities and connection, right? This is really more about the school experience, right? That would be extended here. I want to be careful to say that this is not a test run for next school year either, right? I believe that this would be a transition out of what we're doing right now to offering more of a traditional school day, but certainly would greater prepare our students for the full day from a stamina perspective and some of those pieces as we look at it. This would also eliminate the required asynchronous learning work that kids have right now. The minuses and challenges with this, as I mentioned before, there's some extensive hiring here, significant scheduling restructuring, especially for our students that are receiving support. And this plan is dependent on us securing staff, right? So it would take more time than option one because we do need the staff to run those sections and supervise our lunchrooms. So that is just a consideration there. And then option three that we would plan to have part of a community input survey would be to continue with the current in-person day. Again, current in-person day is 9 to 1, 5 days per week. It is ran since September 1st without a pause. Our kids are getting their core academic subjects, but right now what's negated from that is the 60 minutes of lunch and recess, or at least the full lunch experience, the daily in-person PE, and the weekly art and music. and then about 30 to 40 additional classroom minutes daily compared to the previous schedule that we showed you. What are the pluses with this? Well, our students and staff would continue with a consistent plan and schedule that's been sustained since the beginning of the year. We've had students that are having a lot of success in this with this schedule, and this would not bring an interruption to it, and there would be no additional hiring. The minuses is that it does negate the pieces that we've talked about here before, the PE, lunch, and the weekly art and music. It negates approximately 30 minutes of daily teacher contact time. Again, I want to bring back, though, that 30 minutes would be additional during the day, but some of that's going to be spent on transitioning and learning new routines, especially with our younger students. And the current plan does limit some of the social opportunities, mostly to the individual classroom. I think one of the successful parts of this plan is the reason why it's been sustainable is that our kids are really cohorted, right? So we've been able to withstand some of the storms, that we've been able to drive through. And that was, when we built the plan, we really wanted to have a plan that could sustain, that could be consistent for our kids. And then a minus of this, though, would be that it doesn't give our kids more in-person time at school with peers and teachers, right? Obviously, we believe that our kids should be with our teachers as much as possible, that connection is vital, that being with one another is vital. So I think that this doesn't give that, but that you can see the pluses and minuses there. Want to reiterate, obviously, our plans as we move to August of next year as well. That is always our plan. But around this, we would like to get some community feedback and let the Board of Education have community feedback for both our in-person families, and also offer this feedback for our staff to give us their preference around these three options and have the opportunity to share those results at a next scheduled meeting. So I'll take any questions.
I have a bunch. Thank you, Dr. Slaggy, for that. So first question is, I know a pre-pandemic school day started at 9:15 and now we're at 9:35. So why was the change there? And we'll start there.
Yeah, great question. If you were going to, so there's a few considerations there. Moving the day, if you were at 9:15 to 9:20 start day of the instructional piece, it would double the amount of lunch recess supervisors that you would need to hire. So that number of 40 to 45 would be more about 90 to 95. So certainly it's a consideration there, but now you are asking for people to supervise recess as well as lunch. With this plan, we're beefing up a little bit of our PE time, and it actually takes that whole grade level recess out of it and allows the teacher that option to do so. So it negates some of that time. The other piece of it too is, in the previous schedule, you had 30 minutes of recess and 30 minutes of lunch. This gives you 30 minutes of lunch, but the 30 minutes of recess is not there. Instead, there's 30 minutes of PE as opposed to 20 minutes of PE from the previous schedule. So when you kind of mix those minutes up, right, if we were to go back to the other route, you would really have a 15-minute difference here, and we would be at a 9:20 to a 3:30 piece right now, or like a 9:17 to 3:30 piece. So that's where some of those minutes are missing, right? So when we looked at some of the efficiencies at how to present a plan for a more full traditional day and looking at the staffing needs, this cuts that number down. Now, it does increase the number of PE staff you'd have to bring on as well, but those are challenges that we were balancing as we considered both of those pieces.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering too, with our families, and I don't know if there'll be a question about this, that going from a 9 o'clock start to a 9:35 start could really impact a lot of parents, a lot of working parents, as far as when their child leaves the home. And I'm just curious, I don't know, like if that's going to be a really difficult, maybe not, I don't know, but I just kind of wonder about that, if that's maybe something that can somehow be reflected in the survey, if that is because there may be parents who really want the 5-day, but now they have an issue with the 9:35 start. I don't know, I'm not sure, but just a thought.
No, I think that's certainly a consideration. Two pieces. We would continue to offer BASP and could look at expanded ways of the before and after school programming. But certainly, valid piece.
If we just add the 30 minutes, I know my first thought is that's a long time to go without eating. And so I just want to make sure, are we still providing snacks to those kids who don't have an opportunity to have a snack for individual financial reasons? Are schools still providing those snacks to kids? I think that would be
Yeah,
very,
each
very
building's
important.
kind of getting in that at different ways, whether they're providing them through some of their foundations or some of those pieces, or whether they're taking some of the breakfast that's provided by the actual lunch service right now and weaving that into being part of the snacks. So certainly, regardless though, if we went to the 9 to 1:30, even with what we're doing now, we know for some of our students that maybe aren't bringing a snack or as hearty of a snack, we would have to problem solve, whether that would mean beefing up what they're already getting in that like breakfast piece,
Yeah.
or making sure on hand we have things for them.
Right, yeah, that's just something that is very important to me as,
Yep.
you know, as someone that our children are eating, and there's so much information out there that is such an important piece to their learning. So I would want to make sure that's being taken care of. I just wanted to reiterate the lunch supervisors, that we have a lot of positions that we would need to fill there, and you know, a lot of parents have graciously, you know, offered to volunteer and things like that, but I just want to point, this is a paid, hired position, that this is not a volunteer position, that it's something that you have to come every day, and that's how this position works. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. And I will say that the lunch pieces, you know, you're looking at anywhere from a range of 2 to 3.5 hours a day. If you had recess in there, you'd have more of like a 4-hour span. With us cutting that guarantee piece out of there, most of it's about a 2 to 3 hour commitment for those folks that would be coming in at our buildings.
Okay. And then, would it be true, just as a, maybe a little incentive in the hiring there, that that our lunch supervisors would qualify for the vaccine?
Well, certainly anybody that's employed in a school is a part of 1B.
B, okay.
Yeah.
So, might be a little. Moving on to the full day option, what is the percentage, and I know Ms. Ekstrom is here too, what % of students get services at the elementary level?
In person, or just?
In person, that would be affected by that schedule change.
Yeah, I'll let Erica take that.
At least for special education, almost all of our special education students would be impacted by the change. When you add back in the lunch hours, many of our buildings would have to spread their lunch hour, and that would shift times of the day for services. So right now, we've clustered a majority of our services during that 9 to 1 time, and then our specialists are servicing virtual academy students at that 1:30 time. So when you extend the school day, that essentially spreads out those services between the 9:30 to 3:30 time.
Right.
And then we would have to rework services. We would do our best to minimize that.
Yeah.
And to keep consistency with who they're working with, and we would really make sure that we look at the students who struggle with transitions.
Yeah.
But I want to be transparent, this does have the potential to impact a large number of students.
And what percentage roughly, like how many students have an IEP at the elementary level? Like what percentage of students are we talking
We're
about?
averaging
roughly?
anywhere from 15 to 17% of our population having an IEP.
All right, thank you. That piece is concerning to me as a parent who had a child receiving IEP services all throughout elementary, that, and, you know, 15, so that means we have, you know, 85% or so of our population who hasn't had IEP services. And I just want to point out that changing a therapist or a provider it's like 2/3 into the year we're at, that can be a very dramatic change for a student. And as far as the progress that they're making, that the time it takes to build a relationship with a child as you're doing these services, whether it's speech or OT or PT, that is a big consideration for that population of students. And I just want to make sure that that is said, because I know that from experience that can be very difficult for a child as well as a therapist. For those hiring needs, for all the people that we need to hire, roughly, what cost would that bring to our district?
Yeah, approximately, depending on when you started it,
Yeah.
you're looking at in the range of about 150,000. That could be lower or higher depending on when you started, but 100.
I'm sorry, 100,000 roughly?
150,000.
150,000.
Yeah. A range, though, I would say more, Susan, between 120 to 150,000, depending on when you're able to start executing that plan.
Okay, and then is that part of our budget, or would that be in the contingency funds?
Like contingency, it come out of your
Okay.
contingency fund.
Okay, and we have that still, what we set aside at the beginning of the year, we still have money there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then for the full day, are we still at 6 feet? Because I believe, I'm sorry, is the window is closed for a trimester for parents to switch to, from virtual academy to in person, so we know what our numbers are, and so potentially, so are we staying at elementary, are we able to stay at 6 feet?
Yeah, right now, the plans that were presented are elementary at 6 feet. When we did the third trimester transfer, we did welcome back about 100 students back into buildings. We did have some students that we didn't have space at their home schools because we were adhering to the 6 feet and are choosing some other schools, and some that selected to stay in VA. But these plans are based upon not adjusting that 6 feet at this point.
Okay, so the whole the contact tracing piece isn't really a factor here at the elementary level.
No different than the contact tracing that we've been doing this
Right.
entire year at the level, just there would be in school longer.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, like what we talked about, the middle school, that it wouldn't necessarily have an I don't want to say explosion, but a higher rate of quarantine at all. That doesn't affect elementary, so, hang on, let me just check. I think that's all I have, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Chris, I'm thinking about option two for a second. I understand it'll take longer to implement the complexities with it. I just do the calendar math. If we start from spring, when we come back from spring break, that gives us about almost 10 weeks of instruction, roughly. So assuming this would take us longer than that, spring break, to get this in place, that's my assumption. I assume that's probably valid, right?
Yeah, it's going to be dependent upon the hiring pieces, right?
Right,
so,
right. But it's going to be something ready at the beginning of when we come back from spring break for option two. It'll take a little longer.
I would anticipate that, but we would, if that's the direction we choose to go, we would get working on it, the hiring piece as quickly as possible.
And then with all the change of schedules and everything you laid out, change takes time to stabilize back and return to kind of normal. Do we have any idea? How long does it take to stabilize? Like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And what I'm getting at is option two, it's probably going to take a little longer to implement, and it will take some time to stabilize, so that 10 weeks of available instruction is going to really shrink pretty dramatically. I would think dramatically. I know we have to do the work, and I would certainly, I strongly encourage engaging the community to find out what they want to do. The teachers I get that. I struggle with that compression for option two. So I think getting that answer would be really interesting. And then on option one.
Hey, Rob, can I
Yeah.
just one thing on that? So, again, just point of comparison and something I guess I'd offer to think about with either plan. As I've looked at what some other districts are doing as they're looking at plans to get kids back more. I've seen a lot of plans from other districts that are far more disruptive because they're having to completely reconfigure all classrooms, or at least a chunk of classrooms. So the element that doesn't change out of this, even with option two, is who that core classroom teacher is, and that's really the biggest part of the child's experience and day. So it brings some other variables in the special and some other movement opportunities to lunch, to the specials, to, it certainly impacts, as we were just talking about, some individual students and obviously their experience with specialists. But the biggest portion of the day that being who their classroom teacher is, doesn't change with this. So it doesn't negate your point on there's obviously some transition time, but I think there's less when you're not moving kids to, to different core classrooms.
So where I'm headed is, I'd like to know more about that. What does that 10-week shrink to? What do we think that's going to be? I think that's an important factor as we're looking at the options. That's where I was headed with that point. Secondly, on option 1, the extra 30 minutes, that's a long time. Maybe Susan said it while I was outside, but that's a long time for a kid to go without lunch. I mean, I would struggle with that a little bit. So I don't, we'll figure out what a hearty snack means and how that manifests itself. But I know there's challenges. And the third point, which was the first we're kind of set up, is I would rather we spent our resources and time at the middle school and high school level trying to maximize whatever in-person learning we can get. And it may not be mutually exclusive. I'm just assuming there's a finite amount of resource that we have available, and I'd rather spend my time there. But just some feedback. Again, I'd rather have feedback from the community as well, but that's just one point of view.
I think what really opened my eyes tonight was the fact that we offered 4 days a week at the high school and so few took it, that we can't assume everybody wants us to jump back. So I do think at middle school and at elementary. So I do think that community feedback is super important. Where I'm concerned with is how quickly can we get that, disseminate that information, and get it out so we give parents at least the opportunity, the time to say, hey, wait a minute, I need to make some changes. Like, you talked about BASP and, things like that. We may have to do that. And so how can we get that feedback in the shortest amount of time to make some decisions so we can get kids back as soon as we can? I think with the snack option, why can't we do 2 smaller snacks during the time? I think there are definitely things that we can do. Like, I don't think that should be something that maybe is necessarily holding us back. I do appreciate the creativity for the lunch, because last time, I think it was last committee of the whole, when we were looking at 90 lunch supervisors, I was just really thinking, like, how can we do that? Who wants to take that position for a 10-week period? So the fact that I appreciate that that creativity, as well as possibly using permanent subs, for the PE option, if that's the route we go. But I think that the big thing here is what does the community want us to do? That especially at elementary, because that's 2 very different. Option 1 and 2 are 2 very different plans, as well as our staff and what they think is also sustainable. But I would want to know, like we are at middle school, we might have people that say, now that you're going to a full day, I don't want to do this. We don't have virtual academy space open. What are we going to do? So we need to really think, get that feedback.
So a couple of things on both of those. So we've definitely thought through those things. So I don't want the board thinking that we've come up to these points and then said, now we've got to figure out a plan. We have. So let me parse them out. Feedback window. I think it's important that we be able to first communicate with our community tomorrow exactly what's been discussed tonight, right? We're assuming a fair number of people have watched the meeting tonight, but I think we need to summarize, obviously, the information that's been presented and share it. I believe we can have a survey open by Friday. I think a week is an appropriate amount of time to gather feedback, and then I think the board needs to be prepared quickly to come back together, look at that feedback. Likely that puts you into somewhere around March 24th, that week before spring break, to come back together, look at that feedback, and based on decision points, analyze some implementation timelines that I think are doable. So I think there's a path forward in terms of timeline and feedback. That second piece, to the point, we can certainly look if there are better options based on the number, but I would assume very likely at the middle school, if we lose some percentage of families that are in person and choose to then stay full virtual. That would probably have to be through a live stream option at the middle school. You don't have capacity to add sections. In the virtual academy, we did that at semester, kind of redoing that. I think it'd be very difficult. So you're probably then supporting through a live stream option. And again, my hope would be that that's minimized, that I think if we can effectively communicate the safety of the experience, then hopefully we will not lose families to that.
So now, do we anticipate at middle school level, by bringing in both cohorts at the same time, a busing issue? Because
No.
the bus has not,
You will have more kids on your buses, but right now the buses are also capped at 50, and we've done that analysis. We've looked at every bus route. I think there's one that's being problem solved as we speak, but no, that we would be okay on buses.
Before we turn it over there, I am going to wrap this up and suggest we have a committee of the whole meeting on March 24th, as Dr. Schuler just said, so that we can review the feedback and hear any updates on the plans, because I think if we do recommend a change, it's important to have our community understand this before spring break. So that's how I'm going to wrap up this agenda item.
I have a question. On the elementary schedule, I've heard some feedback that suggests we've been really successful with our elementary model. So maybe, we're in a groove, we should just see it through and let it play out. But I do wonder, do we know what % of asynchronous engagement we've had across our schools? When you say there's another hour of asynchronous after the school day, are people really doing that? Are the teachers that teach those specials getting engagement with those kids, or are people doing the 4 hours of school and they haven't had lunch, going home and just being done for the day? Do we have any actual data on that?
We don't have actual data on that. What I would tell you is feedback is mixed, right? We have some that are really engaged with it, and some that are not. So you would really have a mixed bag of responses, and I think that just probably lends itself a little bit to the difference between asynchronous and in-person learning, right? So while our teachers are certainly doing some really creative things, it just kind of is a part of how a kid's flow, or even their flow at home, may be handled. We have some of our kids that go to before and after school program, and they have a very regimented piece where they go there, they eat, and they're doing their asynchronous before they play.
Okay.
Some kids may come home, need a more significant break, or may not be ready for that. So I think you're going to get mixed pieces on that, no matter how valuable or credible the actual asynchronous piece was.
Okay. The reason I ask is just if we felt like the specials teachers, and I guess so that's a question for those teachers, do you feel like you're actually achieving anything with these kids? That would give me a sense of how important is it to add another 30 minutes to the elementary day so that we are sure they're getting instruction in those areas by the end of this school year.
Sure.
Okay.
The first question I have, the PE staff that we need to hire, does that mean PE teachers we had pre-pandemic are no longer here, or are they filling other roles?
No, great question. So our PE staff pre-pandemic has stayed relatively stable, with the exception when we staffed the virtual academy. I believe we gave 2 or 3, 2. Yeah, we gave 2 to the virtual academy to staff that. But the increase in the PE staff is really because we are increasing some of our PE time, and what that will do is negate the recess supervision piece. So part of it is a strategy to give our kids some more specials, which we know they've been missing. The other part of it is it also decreases the amount of recess supervisors needed.
Okay. What % of kids in elementary are in virtual versus?
In virtual?
Yeah, versus in person.
We just added about another 100. So that number started this year at about 27. After first trimester, I think it went to about, I want to say 25 or 24%. And now, after this one, we're probably inching closer to about 22, 21%. Those are my rough estimates. So our in-person continues to increase gradually. We're not at 80%, but we're in the high 70s for in-person.
And so given the potential significant change based on the new guidance, are those people that have chosen virtual, right, that decision's already been made for the third trimester? Are they locked in, or will there be consideration given if, because of the new guidance, people want to?
We were not planning to revisit that, or in terms of our planning. Again, I'm not so sure what the new guidance would change that would drive more people to in person. We're still going to be at 6 feet.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. I guess in my mind, I mean, I was, before yesterday, I was kind of with what Rob said, wondering, you know, we really should be focusing on high school and middle school, and I really wasn't sure how much was behind making changes at elementary school. Like 30 minutes is a relatively small amount of time, and it just seemed kind of disruptive without doing a lot at high school and middle school. Now with these changes and more emphasis in high school and middle school, and the survey, I think that's a really important piece to understand what people want, because it is, I mean, I'm kind of surprised by some of those high school numbers in terms of, you know, how many people aren't coming back. So, okay, thank you.
All right, so I just have, I guess, one question and one comment. First comment, and I think Rob touched on it. You know, one of the things we've heard from our virtual academy parents during the course of the year is the importance of kind of a routine and a schedule, and I think it might have been more at the middle school level, but what concerns me about option 2 is it sounds like we're going to have some pretty big impact on those parents. So it's going to be very interesting to hear the feedback from this community survey. That concerns me, is the amount of change we're going to be putting on students, especially with the IEPs and the staff we have to use. Do you feel, how worried are we about the staffing, the need to hire staff at this point in time in the school year? It seems like a big number, but is this?
Yeah, I think that's the most significant challenge. But, you know, two approaches I think that we've identified are the most aggressive or most valuable that we can do, which is tapping into our permanent sub pool, and then also for our lunch piece, really tapping into our parent community. So how concerned am I? I think that it's a challenge, but I think we'll have a really realistic viewpoint on that once we really open that up, and really get after that on who are takers and who they aren't. So I would certainly be much more concerned if we were going to be hiring or saying we have to hire 15 certified PE teachers as opposed to permanent subs, but the challenge is still real.
Okay. And then finally, I think a couple people touched on this. Do you feel that we can move all 3 of these balls, you know, high school, middle school, and elementary school forward simultaneously, or do you need the board to prioritize, you know, action, recommendations, or where do we go first?
Yeah, we would not have brought to you options we didn't believe we could implement. I think it would be disingenuous to have even put options out there that we didn't feel like we could execute.
Okay.
I'm not going to suggest that it's easy, and again, I think the board has aptly described in some of the changes what may appear to some to be just simple adjustments that you can flip a switch on, really are not. There's a lot that moves into that, but we would not have put something in front of you that we didn't believe we could execute.
Okay. And I guess just to wrap this up, so it's been mentioned, I would like to propose that we add a Wednesday, March 24th, 2 weeks from tonight, committee of the whole, to look at these plans and see what the community feedback is, so that we can kind of make some decisions and communicate to people before we get into spring break what the plan is. As we've said, these are really, really complex issues, especially at the middle school and high school level. So is it just? Yeah.
Can I make one more comment just on the survey that will go out, and I'm sure this is going to happen anyway, but so I think you said communication will go out tomorrow with the board notes, and then Friday the survey will go out on its own separate email. Is that correct? Okay. And will we be sending this out? I guess I would ask if we could please send this out. I always say like fired on all cylinders, like text, email, social media, like any because I think sometimes parents don't get it, and I want to say to our community, an email is coming, a survey is coming Friday. You know, please help us get that message out to parents, because I think sometimes the emails get lost in parents' inboxes and things like that. And this is, you know, really critical information that we need from the community. And, you know, we'll do our part on our end to make sure parents are aware of this survey. But I got, you know, like I said, I would ask the community too. I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure there's a lot of people watching now that, you know, there is a survey coming Friday in your email. Please check your email Friday.
Correct. We will push that out, but we really want to make sure that we're very targeted too in making sure we're sending applicable links to the right people, because what we've seen throughout this year is as we push opportunities to provide feedback or surveys, we have to make sure we're gathering really good data too, and that we're limiting the number of times people are taking surveys, because we've had to, a lot of times what causes us some delays and snafus is when we have too much data where people who a survey doesn't apply to have responded, or maybe they've forgotten that they've replied and they've responded more than once. Maybe they've changed their answer. And so we will make sure that we do our very best to get that information in front of parents and give them reminders to reply, but also just want to make sure that we're very targeted in our communications efforts.
Thank you.
Hey, Brad, sorry. Just thank you to the team in responding to feedback we got literally within days. It's a lot of content and a lot of complexity to pull together, and I thought the team did a fantastic job. And I thought the questions from the board were, you know, nicely critical, but by no means it's an indicator of, you know, the work. It was fantastic work, so we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. And one thing I want to point out for the community, when we do a survey, it's not a vote. It's not, you're not choosing something. We are seeking feedback from our community that will inform decisions we make going forward. So I just, you know, that's often misinterpreted. We heard that in the spring, in the beginning of the school year, but that's the intent of the seeking the feedback, is just to collecting some insight, collecting some opinions, so that we can make the right decision. All right, thank you for that, and all the work that was done in the last couple weeks and really the last 24 hours with the change. So very positive, and we'll continue to try to move that ball forward for kids. Okay, next oral report is the social and emotional learning feature.
All right, I'm back. Excited again to talk a little bit about social emotional learning. As a reminder, we were at each board meeting pre-pandemic featuring some of the great social emotional learning work in our schools. In your package, you'll see a write-up of our SEL feature. And what I've really tried to do is highlight some of the direct work that's happening at a building as a result of our broader social emotional learning focus. So this example that I'm going to point out here actually comes from Whittier Elementary, and it just strikes me as such a powerful thing that our grade level teachers are doing for our kids in 4th grade at Whittier. One of the most powerful things that we can do is get feedback from our stakeholders. You all just talked about that, and we just talked about that, getting feedback from our stakeholders. Well, the teacher stakeholders are their kids, right? And so every day, our 4th graders at Whittier, when they come in person, our students fill out a survey the second that they arrive. And that survey asks, how are you feeling? The kids have been trained on to use a rating scale on their feelings. That survey asks them when they woke up, what they ate for breakfast. But it ends with, do you need to talk with me about anything? The survey gives the teacher an instant result that they check quickly at the start of the day. This is really a confidential opportunity for the student to provide that input to the teacher, especially in a time now where, yes, our kids can move in the classroom, but movement is a little more restricted. So our teachers are doing a phenomenal job. This is not an isolated example. Our teachers have been using surveys more and more and more. But to implement this as a daily practice, I thought was worth highlighting. Well, Whittier Elementary School has done a full school-wide survey of both their students and their virtual academy students if they have a trusted adult and they're acting upon that. I think when you bring that down even a level and we say, how is our broader work around surveying students and getting feedback on how that connection piece is happening, this is an example of a group of teachers really taking a tight and loose structure and saying, hey, let's move forward with this. So really, really good work. It's an example of strengthening connections, but also being dialed into how connection can positively impact emotional wellness. And those are two huge, really, in my opinion, the most significant parts of our social emotional learning framework. So while the feature is brief tonight, I think it's very significant, and I wanted to recognize the team at Whittier for doing that work.
All right, thanks. So another survey.
What's that?
Another survey.
Yes, yes, daily.
We love surveying everybody. All right, thank you, Dr. Slaggy. Okay, to our action items, we do have one action item tonight, which is to approve an approval of the post-high school novels. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Schuler for this item.
I think Mrs. Murphy is making her way up to the podium just to give you a little bit of background on this action item.
Thank you so much. We have a presentation tonight that gives you some more context regarding the novels that we are looking to post for public review tonight. So this is all about expanding our collection of diverse texts. So we have some guiding questions that we're going to walk through tonight. Why do we want to expand the collection of diverse text? What work has been done at our high school? What high school novels have been selected for public display? What work has been done at the middle school? And what are the next steps with this work? So we're going to start with why expand our collection of diverse literature. So over a year ago, I presented to the Board of Education around our goal of expanding our literature, and it's very much connected to your Vision 2022 strategic plan, in specific the area that talks about providing experiences and instruction to develop students' appreciation of cultures and diversity. At that time, I also presented the concept of windows and mirrors, and that's the idea that students should see themselves in the books that they read, but they should also have an opportunity to learn about others, and that's the windows part, where they can look into the world and learn about others. So when students can connect with materials or see themselves in their materials, it certainly leads to increased engagement and more meaningful learning. Additionally, this work is directly named in our equity work plan this year. And at our committee of the whole meeting last month, Dr. Puello presented our new equity framework. And so this is connected to that framework specifically in the area of curriculum instruction, assessment, and professional development. So I'm going to turn now the presentation over to Dr. Puello. She has been working with the high school this year around this goal, and she's going to provide you with some more information about the work that has been done in this area.
So the work that has been done in the high schools, we began with conducting an audit of the English, of the texts that are being read by our English students. And the audit was conducted to examine the level of diversity in which students are exposed to through the literature. In conducting the text audit, we analyzed the following areas. We looked at the racial diversity of the author and the characters, the settings of the story. We also looked at how minoritized groups are portrayed, the alignment to standards, and also the socioeconomic diversity of the texts. Now, in addition to the audit, the high schools also conducted panels with students to solicit feedback on the need to diversify text. So we utilize this process to get feedback from students and to listen to, what they felt or how they felt about the books that they were reading. The department chairs and assistant principals, they use the results of the audit as well as the student feedback to identify areas in which we needed to diversify the novels that are being read by our high school students. Now, our staff recommended and reviewed multiple novels. They identified novels that were aligned to the curriculum, and they selected novels to include in English courses. The goal of this work is to have our curriculum better reflect our students, our school community, and really offer our students exposure to literature that offers a diverse perspective. The next area that I'm going to talk about is what high school novels have been selected for public display. And so the books that were recommended for display take place in various settings, including Nigeria, India, various parts of the United States, Southeast Africa, and they have diverse characters and diverse perspectives. The books include various themes of gender expectations, rebirth, entrepreneurship, racial conflict, identity, migration, belonging, personal responsibility, religion, culture, tradition, power, and privilege. The books also provide information to students where they can learn about the historical role of racism and injustices in America. They also advocate for social justice within traditionally marginalized communities, and we are also providing a book for public review that of an anthology of poems that are written by diverse American artists from various regions in America. So in your packet, you have this document, and I want to highlight this document because in this sheet you will find more detail with respect to why the 12 titles were selected. You will find the text of the title, but how this specific title is going to enrich and contribute to the diversity of our text. And you will also find the course which that book would be read in.
Before moving into our next guiding question here, which is with regards to the work that's being done at the middle school, I also want to point out that at our high school level, our teams worked through a list of a recommended 80 different books that they started with. They read multiple teachers read that list of books and narrowed it down to the 12 that we're bringing to you tonight. So because this is a goal on our equity work plan, we're also working with our middle school level to diversify text. So we have completed that same type of audit at the middle school level with the 61 board-approved novels. The only exception is we have not had a novel renewal in a very long time at the middle school level, so that audit also has included classroom usage of books by classroom teachers. We know that student voice and choice are absolutely essential to curriculum development, so yet another survey, but this one is for our students, and it's to seek their feedback and guide our work. And we developed that survey and utilized our middle school advisory team. This is a group of students that I meet with and bring in other folks into the conversation as it pertains to the work we're doing. And so those middle school students represent our four middle school buildings, but also virtual academy students. And they provided us feedback on our survey that allowed us to make it very meaningful for our students. So we also have some next steps to our work. So at the middle school level, we'll be administering that survey and analyzing the results. We are going to utilize the same process that we have had at our high school level with a committee to research and read text and bring any future recommendations to the Board of Education. At the high school, this is an action item, so the hope is to post the recommended text for public review this evening. But from that point too, we would also be providing professional learning for our staff and facilitating learning with students around these topics and educating our staff around how to have difficult conversations with students around various topics. So at this time, we will answer any questions that you may have.
Where are the books available for people if they want to review them?
Always at the district office, so in the, anybody can come into the district office. They're literally on display right as you walk inside the front door, where they can spend as much time. We'll give people space if they need space to review any of them.
Will these be used in terms of whole class novels, or are these, choice? How are we going about that?
So these would be books that would be read by the entire class.
By the entire class.
Do we have any sense of whether any of these are available at the Wheaton Public Library?
Well, that's a really fantastic question that we can get an answer to.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see. I think this is a fantastic list, and I looked up each of the books in a summary of them, and I've heard of several of these. I unfortunately have not read them, but I plan to. I think this is a great list, and I think about when I was in high school and the books I was reading. I will fully admit English was not my favorite subject, and when I think about English, I think about The Scarlet Letter and Shakespeare and Brave New World, and those are the kind of books I remember reading in high school. And I was not a reader, and I think bringing some of these stories that are a little bit more modern, more relevant in students' lives, I think that's a huge push forward. And I'm sure it's changed a lot since I was in high school in the late 80s and early 90s, but I just think that's such a great step forward in what our students are reading. And I actually had the same question as Jenna about being at the library. And I also wanted to mention too that I think it was in the summer, I'm sorry, I looked it up, but I didn't look at the date. We had an alumni of our district, a student alumni, who's not too far out. I think you met with her, and she sent a very extensive list of resources and books that she felt that our district should look at, and 2 of the books that were on her list are on this list. And so I just wanted to mention that and think that, I'm sorry, I didn't write her name down, but I just want to say thank you to her for providing that information too, that we do look at it.
Yeah, actually I mentored to Dr. Pueyo. She actually spoke with that student.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the opportunity of speaking with a group of students over the summer. They had obviously some recommendations for students, and in the conversation that I had with those students, they spoke to the need to just wanting to read more titles that really provided them a perspective into different areas, particular things that were going on in the community at the time. And so they were really just excited about providing their list of just novels that they felt like every student should read. And you are correct, some of those are on there, obviously. These were books that were vetted by our teachers,
You're right.
and they read them, and just to make sure that they are aligned to the standards. So,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and I think the student voice, and I know I've said this before with other things, is so huge. I think in anything that we do, and I know we've been kind of making fun of the surveys tonight, but they're so critical. And I don't remember being asked, in high school what I wanted to read or what I wanted to do. And I think that is so hugely important, and it's such great feedback, because I'll say it again, I think sometimes we as parents, and I'm certainly guilty of this, I'm like, well, this is what they would like, and this is what, and you ask them and they're like, no, not really, and they have a good idea. It's not that they don't want to do it, it's just they have a different idea. And so I think that's such a huge piece at both the high school and middle school level to ask them and what their opinion is. So thank you for this. I'm really excited about it.
Can we make sure that, I'm just looking, because I think there's 6, for example, sophomore English, and I know from my children, they never did 6 novels their entire sophomore English year, that we at least have copies available in our school library, so that if it by chance isn't one of them that teacher has chosen to use, or that there are still opportunities, and it's welcomed, that we have enough there that we've made some extra purchases for our school libraries as well.
We can share that recommendation as well.
Okay, just I guess one question, one comment. So we're expanding our list of novels. We're not replacing what we have with this list. Is that correct?
So at this point, we are expanding
Right.
what we have. Our teachers will be, if approved, obviously building curriculum around those books. At this point, there will be obviously some conversations later on as far as like what that would replace.
Okay. And then I guess the other comment, just a reminder for the board, we're just approving this to post it for public review and comment. Hopefully we get some feedback. We don't often get feedback from our community when we go through this, whether it's a policy or a textbook or probably in this case novels. So I'd just like to, I'm hopeful that we receive some feedback from people who are interested in this particular topic. And the plan would be to bring this back to our agenda on April 14th for action.
Can I just make a comment? I would like to thank you guys for all the work you've done. I know that when we started talking about the equity work plan way back last summer and in the fall, I was concerned that some of this stuff might get lost because of this whole COVID year. And I knew, especially talking to students, I knew how very important this topic was for students, and I didn't want us to lose that, especially since we didn't have students in person to start the school year. I was afraid their voices would get lost. But I'm just amazed by the amount of work you guys have done on all aspects of our diversity work plan, and I think that's wonderful, and you should be applauded for that. So thank you for all that hard work.
And I really want to extend that thank you to the staff at both of the high schools, and I know you were including them in that conversation, but I just want to highlight them. They really, this work was near and dear to their hearts, and they were so committed to doing this on top of all the extra that they had this year.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the posting of the high school novels for community review as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Who moved it?
Jenna.
Moved by Mrs. Erickson, seconded by Mr. Long. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, the action item to approve the posting of those novels has been approved as presented. We have no discussion items tonight. We have a couple written reports, as we always do, attached to our agenda for information. That would be the monthly financial report, the Freedom of Information Act report, the board communication log, and then the meeting minutes from the Citizens Advisory Committee. I don't remember the exact date, but I think it might have been the one in January. Yeah, January's Citizens Advisory Committee. We have a couple reports attached from board committees. Those are noted. I think there were 4 of them attached for information. Any other reports from board members that anybody wants to share?
I have one. I just wanted to mention that a few weeks ago, I received an email from IASB that I was recommended to be a part of the Joint Annual Conference Panel Review Committee. And I accepted that, so I will be on that committee that reviews all of the submitted programs for that conference and choosing those. So just wanted to let you all know that.
Well, I submitted one, Susan, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping they strip out the submitting district. But do they? Or do you know? Oh, yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping they submit, so I don't know which one, so don't tell me, but
Okay.
we'll see.
Won't say anything. Rob, do you want to start, or do you want me to start with our visit? So As part of Teaching and Learning Committee, we've had the opportunity to go on field trips this year. I know we said at the last meeting we were going to go to Wheaton, Warrenville South, but with middle school and lots of questions on, how can we increase middle school time, Dr. Schuler recommended we visit a middle school, and so we spent a fair amount of time visiting Edison last week, I believe it was. We're able to see 2 grade levels of lunch periods and a multitude of classrooms and really watch concurrent teaching happening in there, and seeing the opportunities of how they were engaging students at home as well as with the students in the classroom. Some students interacted with us as well. It was really heartwarming to see the level of engagement. But I got to tell you, those teachers are working really hard. I mean, they're managing what's, the engagement on the screen, as well as and trying to make sure and interweave that everybody is participating in that lesson. It was amazing to see that happening. Space was a challenge because we walked through it with the lens of if we were to go down in space, and looking at the science classrooms, the art classroom, like those were, as we sat there and talked about, like, what would that look like? And, furniture, I really appreciate that opportunity of now understanding what, as we looked at that as we were walking through, looked at lunches in 3 spaces at Edison, and we saw a PE class happening while we were there as well, and what PE looks like at the middle school level. We watched passing periods to see what that is like. But I think the really great thing was the students that were there, and even the students that were online, they were so engaged and happy to be learning, and the teachers were extremely enthusiastic with everybody. And Rob, you want to chime in?
No, nothing to add. It was just, again, impressive, just as our other visits have been.
So we haven't forgotten about Wheaton, Warrenville South. We are looking to get that on the calendar soon as well, and Jefferson. I know that was another one we talked about. So,
Any other reports from board members?
A couple things. I had my first meeting with the teacher group and all of the teachers I'm with are all elementary, and they were really positive about the experience and the year, and it was really uplifting because some of them admitted being skeptical at the beginning of the year, and it was refreshing. And we also had an equity task force meeting. We are continuing to develop action items, and the pace seems to be picking up. I think Dr. Puello is doing a good job of kind of taking over the leadership. I didn't comment about the books because I knew I would talk about it here. It's my sense, and I might be wrong, but so I don't mean to be critical of what happened in the past, but it's my sense that this happened a little faster, these books getting introduced and posted a little quicker than traditionally is done. And maybe I'm misinformed on that, but that's my sense, just that it kind of happened a little quicker. So I think that's positive. And just I just want to make a couple comments about the work about tonight. Really awesome to have all those students here. It kind of gets, it almost, I facetiously thought, oh, well, that's kind of why we're here. It's about the kids, and we haven't seen that in a year. It was a year ago. I distinctly remember our March meeting last year that Dr. Schuler said, oh, the flight event at South that weekend looks like it's going to get canceled. It wasn't even a consideration that schools were going to get shut down, and 36 hours later schools were shut down. So it's been quite a year. But I mean, again, I want to recognize all the work that went in tonight, and again, a lot of pivot from yesterday, and to a lot of people it's simple. Here's the guidance, okay, open tomorrow. And I mean, I think we see tonight all that complexity, and we are leading. And I'm very proud of this school district. I'm very proud of the administration, and I'm proud of this board. I know we get criticized a lot for maybe we're not challenging you enough, But I mean, I know we all bring unique perspectives. We're all collegial. We respect each other's opinion, and I think those are all positive things. And while it's not been perfect and there's been mistakes made, I couldn't be more proud of where we are, and think that we all should, that we all should feel good about that, and that we have put students first from the beginning, and that continues to be the case, and we're not bowing to the union, but we are considering teachers, because the teachers are a big part of this, and I just think, yeah, we're not perfect, and yeah, there might be a school here or there, or a private school that's done a little better, but I would challenge anybody to bring a unit district with as many schools as we have that it's done as well as we are, so I think we should all feel good about that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Dave. I agree with you based on the people that I talk to outside of our district. So, anybody else? Okay, we have a couple topics we want to highlight for future discussion, which includes the elementary FLES program. That's a dual language. I believe some version of a dual language program.
Foreign language exploratory program.
Okay, there you go. That's FLES. And then secondly would be our master technology plan update. Our next regular meeting is April 14th here again at Hubble. We did add a meeting 2 weeks from tonight on March 24th, the Committee of the Whole, to kind of follow up on tonight's discussions. A couple of quick announcements as it relates to meetings. We typically have a chance to chat with the board where we try to engage with students. The one this year, I think as we did last already with Wheaton North, the April 6th session at Wheaton Warrenville South High School is going to be postponed. And then on April 28th is our Committee of the Whole, again back here at Hubble Middle School. I don't believe we have any public comments on non-agenda items. We do not.
Hey, Brad?
Yep.
24th will be here?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I not say Hubble?
I'm talking about the one
Oh,
we
yeah,
added
the
tonight.
24th,
Just
yeah.
want to make sure
Yeah.
it was here and not
Yeah.
at this.
Yeah, all our meetings are here.
I know. Just
Okay, so with that, our regular meeting is concluded, so I move to adjourn a closed session for the purpose of discussing, oh, this is my favorite one to read, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or specific volunteers of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor in a park, recreational, or educational setting, or a volunteer of the public body, or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity under 5 ILCS 120/2, subparagraph C, subparagraph 1. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Long. Mrs. Hutchinson, would you please call the roll? Yes.
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 Okay, this meeting is adjourned as we move to closed session. There is no action going to be taken following closed session.